Chapter 248. The incident at the bridgehead did not affect the wedding procession. The bridal sedan was lifted again, and the procession slowly moved forward. Shenhan's anxious heart finally calmed down. He patted his chest and said, "You scared me to death." Fortunately, nothing happened. "Chief Instructor, did you see that?" Mrs. Skills did not fall behind. Liang Ping touched his chin and said, "Her movements just now were so swift. She is indeed a soldier that I taught." "Are you proud of the soldier that you taught?" Shenhan glanced at him. "If you have the ability, say it again in front of the Commander-in-Chief." "I don't dare." Liang Ping smiled embarrassedly. "We shouldn't call her Missy now, right?" Damei moved forward and said, "Should we call her young madam?" "That's not right." Liang Ping scratched his head. "She has an official position now. We should call her madam." "Then, Madam, shall he?" "Why does she sound like a man?" Xiao Mai bent down to pick up a piece of wedding money on the ground. Just as she straightened up, she heard the aunt beside her say, "How could Military Governor Xiao pick up the veil on the ground by herself just now? How inauspicious." "That's right." The bride's face was seen by others. "She is not particular about etiquette. I heard that she was originally a woman from an ordinary family. It's natural that she doesn't know these rules." "That's not right. Hey!" A loud shout interrupted the women who were gossiping together. The women turned their heads and saw a strong man with a scar on his face staring at them fiercely. He shouted, "If she didn't go out, that boy will be dead now. You people are just standing there and talking. What the hell do you know?" The women were shocked. The leading woman retorted fiercely, "We are talking among ourselves. What does it have to do with you?" Wang Ba pulled out the long knife at his waist. When the women saw this, they were so scared that their faces turned pale. They stopped arguing with Wang Ba and turned to run away. Jiang Jiao coughed softly. "Brother Wang, you don't have to scare them like that. These shrews only know how to gossip behind people's backs. I don't like listening to them." Wang Ba sheathed his saber and scowled. "What bullsh asterisk T rules are they? Who made the rules? If I say there is no such rule, then there is no such rule." He was used to being overbearing, so Jiang Jiao could only smile helplessly. My, on the other hand, shared his hatred for a common enemy. "That's right. Why don't they say that brother, he saved someone just now? Forgive me too." Hong Shan leaned against the railing of the bridge and smiled. "The three men that women in Shuo capital want to marry the most have been taken away by your He-Go. I'm not happy about it, but what's wrong with my mouth? Where it's possible to make mistakes, one should forgive them. Brother, his meddlesome nature hasn't changed even after becoming a woman." Huang Xiong shook his head and sighed. "Seeing someone in trouble, you want to save them regardless of the situation. I think that lady, he is no different from He Yin of the Liangzhou guards." Wang Ba snorted. "Otherwise, it wouldn't be like her. Let's go." He put away the string of wedding money he had just stolen. The procession has gone far. The bridal sedan circled around half of the capital before arriving at Shaofu. Before getting off the sedan, Chiwu handed over a bow and arrow. A youth wearing wedding clothes walked to the front of the sedan and shot 3 red arrows towards the bottom of the sedan. The red arrows were firmly nailed into the bottom of the sedan to ward off evil spirits. Bai Rongwei helped Yin down from the bridal sedan and handed the red string tied with a concentric knot to Xiao Ju and Yan's hands. Yan had a veil over her head and couldn't see anything. She had been blind for a long time and was used to being able to walk by herself even in the dark. But today, she had completely given herself to another person and entrusted her entire body and mind to him. The bride held the concentric knot and was carefully led over the brazier towards the auditorium. The auditorium was already filled with people who were watching the excitement. Lin Shuanghe stood at the very front with a face full of smiles. And he glanced at his expression and couldn't help but say in disgust, "What's with your expression? Those who don't know would think that you're marrying a wife today. This is even more delightful than me marrying a wife." Lin Shuanghe opened his fan. "What is more delightful than your close friend marrying your close friend? Your close friends are too many and too cheap." And he mocked him. "Brother," Lin Shuanghe looked at him, "a loner like you doesn't even have many friends. Why did you come to our Huai Jin's wedding? You think I really wanted to come?" Yin He sneered. Ian sent an invitation to Chengxiu, and Chengxiu forced me to come. Who wants to see Xiao Huijin get married? Who hasn't gotten married before? He glanced at Lin Shuanghe. Oh, I'm sorry. I almost forgot. You haven't gotten married before. What do you know? Lin Shuanghe closed his fan and smiled. I won't give up the entire garden for a flower. Yin he replied with a cold laugh. As they spoke, He Yin and Xiao Ju had already arrived in front of the incense table. After the music was played and the firecrackers were fired, the two of them first offered incense and candles to the gods and ancestral tablets. Then they offered incense, prostrated themselves, and returned to their original positions. Then the couple bowed 3 times. Xiao family's parents were no longer there. Bai Ronwei invited the memorial tablets out of the ancestral hall. After paying respects to the heaven and earth, the husband and wife faced each other. Ian lowered his head and bowed. Suddenly, it seemed that a long life had passed. When he got up, the crowd cheered. Cheng Lisu's excited shouts were mixed in. Send them to the bridal chamber. Hurry, uncle, hurry up and lift the veil. I want to see Aunt. Song Tao Dao frowned slightly. Lower your voice. Why lower my voice? Cheng Lisu's face was full of excitement. Don't you want to see what Aunt looks like in her wedding dress? Song Tao Dao silently rolled her eyes. She really didn't want to see. Who would want to see their sweetheart marry someone else in a phoenix coronet and a red wedding gown? But there was still someone beside her who didn't understand her meaning. I didn't expect my brother to become my aunt in the end. It's unbelievable. Ian was led into the bridal chamber by Qing Mei and by Ronwei. They temporarily avoided the noisy crowd outside. She was covered by the veil and couldn't see anything. As soon as she sat down, she was startled. She reached out and grabbed a few longans. Bai Ronwei smiled. Congratulations, He. It seems that you and Huijin will have a child soon. He Qing Mei quickly smoothed out the wrinkles on He Yan's wedding dress. Then, she hurriedly stuffed 2 snacks the size of a finger into He Yan's mouth. She whispered, Miss, eat a few bites to fill your stomach first. The young master will be here soon to lift the veil. Eat carefully. Don't rub off on your fat. He Yin was originally calm, but after hearing Qing Mei's words, he became nervous. However, eating something could indeed ease one's nerves. She ate 3 or 4 bites in a row. Then, Cheng Lisu's excited voice came from outside. Uncle, hurry up. Don't make my aunt wait. Immediately after, Song Tao Tao retorted, You should shut up. I think you're the most anxious one. A group of people walked over noisily. Ian thought that he had seen a lot of wind and waves in his 2 lives, but at this moment his palms couldn't help but be covered in a thin layer of sweat. The bridal chamber was actually very spacious. However, Lin Shuanghe, Cheng Lisu, and Liang Ping all squeezed in. No matter how big the room was, it wasn't big enough. Xiao Jing handed the red cloth-wrapped weighing scale to Xiao Ju. She said, Huijin, it's time to pick the bridal veil. Xiao Ju took the bridal veil and slowly walked in front of Ian. Ian sat with his head lowered. She could see his black boots under the veil. Suddenly, she pursed her lips. From today onwards, she had never officially met Xiao Ju. However, after taking off the veil, her life would be closely linked to Xiao Ju's life. He would become the person who stood side by side with her. How would Xiao Ju see her? Ian's thoughts ran wild. At this moment, she felt as if she had returned to her previous life. She sat in front of the mirror and slowly took off her mask. She looked at the familiar, yet unfamiliar face under the mask. It was like a dream, real yet illusory. The bridal veil hooked around the edge of the bridal veil. Then her eyes lit up. Ian grabbed the corner of his robe and slowly raised his head to look at the person in front of him. She fell into a pair of black eyes. In an instant, the moonlight was blurred and the blue sky was bright. The man stood a step away from her and looked down at her. His red robe was like fire. In this crowd, he was stunningly beautiful. His eyes were like the night sky. But in the night sky, she could see a complete and clear reflection of herself. In his eyes, there was no one else but herself. Ian looked at him in a daze. It was as if she wanted to look at him forever. The room was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. After some time, Lin Shuanghe shouted exaggeratedly, "Oh my God! I've attended at least 8 wedding banquets, if not 10, but this is the first time I've seen such a beautiful bride. How lucky is our Huaijin to be able to marry a fairy who descended from the heavens. How much good karma did you cultivate in your previous life to be able to have such good fortune in this life? Are you here to perform?" And he dug his ears and said disdainfully, "You're such a smooth talker." Shun Han and the other instructors were stunned. Liang Ping even blushed and said, "I didn't expect He Yin to be even more beautiful than Dr. Shun in a wedding dress." "If you want to die, I won't stop you," Shun Han warned in a low voice. "Don't drag me down with you. My aunt is so beautiful. She's my aunt." Chung Li Su clenched her fists excitedly. "I announce that the most beautiful woman in Shuo City is my aunt." Song Tao Dao held her forehead. However, from a woman's point of view, He Yin was too beautiful today. Although she was charming when she was dressed as a man, when she sat there and looked up at the man in front of her, her eyes sparkled like stars in the Milky Way. "Brother Wang," Xiaomai asked Wang Ba, "this time you have to admit that Ehigu is really beautiful." Wang Ba waved his hand impatiently. "She's just so. He couldn't help but take a few more glances. "Brother, he is very good," Jiang Jiao said with a smile. "I see that military governor Xiao treats her very well. When men look at other men, they always have a lot of understanding." Bai Rong smiled and reminded him softly, "It's time to drink the nuptial wine." He Yin came back to his senses and stood up with Qing Mei's help. Xiao Ju picked up the pot on the table and divided it into 2 cups. He Yin carefully picked up 1 cup and held his wrist as he lowered his head and drank. Bai Rong smiled and said, "After the nuptial wine, husband and wife become one, equal in status, and never leave each other." He Yin let out a sigh of relief. He didn't know why, but he didn't dare to look up at Xiao Ju. After the nuptial wine, the groom had to go to the front of the hall. The group of people crowded around Xiao Ju and left. Only Qing Mei and He Yin were left in the room. He Yin waited until the door closed and sat down on the couch. He patted his chest and said, "It's finally over. I was almost nervous to death." "Eh?" Qing Mei asked curiously. "Miss, were you nervous just now?" This servant saw that Miss was very relaxed. "Relax my ass, it was all an act." He Yin took off the phoenix coronet on his head. The coronet looked small and cute, but when it was decorated with pearls and jewels, it was very heavy. After holding it up for so long, his neck was a bit sore. Qing Mei helped He Yin put the coronet to the side. Seeing He Yin already unbuttoning the wedding dress, she was shocked and quickly stopped He Yin's hand. "Miss, you don't need to take off your clothes. This room is really hot, and there are so many clothes," He Yin said helplessly. In order to avoid the cold, the heater in the room was very strong. Her wedding dress had 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside. It was winter, so her forehead was even sweating. However, Qing Mei was very stubborn. "No, miss, you have to listen to this servant. You can't take off your clothes." He Yin and her deadlocked for a while. Finally, he admitted defeat and said, "Okay, I'll listen to you." She stood up. After sitting in the sedan chair for half a day, her legs were numb. She poured herself a cup of hot tea. While drinking, she looked at the bridal room. As she looked, her expression became strange. When he first returned to Shuojing, He Yin lived with the Xiao family for a period of time. He also went to Xiao Ju's room. Xiao Ju's room looked cold and simple. The color was also very plain. It was either white or black. In this bridal room, other than the Shi character and red paper, the other decorations looked very gaudy. Even the legs of the table were padded with a layer of light pink cloth. He Yin's mouth twitched when he saw this. How did Xiao Ju's taste change so much in such a short time? She didn't care. Moving from Lady He's room to this room was just a change of place. But didn't Xiao Ju feel uncomfortable? Look at the bronze mirror with the lace border. Look at the pink curtain with the sachet hanging on it. It was a living room of the Qin dynasty, It was simply crazy. Just as she was thinking, she heard Qing Mei calling her in a small voice. Miss. He Yin turned around and saw Qing Mei standing by the bed. She had a difficult expression on her face, so he asked, "What's wrong?" Madam passed away early. When Miss got married, although there was Miss Chungshio was still young. A few days ago, Aunt Lu in the alley gave this servant something. Her face was flushed red, and she stuttered as if she found it hard to speak. She trembled as she took out something from her bosom. She didn't dare to look at it and stuffed it into Hyan's hand. Aunt Lu said that when Miss got married, her mother would give her this. So this servant took it back. Hyan looked down and saw a palm-sized booklet in her hand. She looked at Qing Mei suspiciously. When she opened it, she saw Qing Mei turn around in a panic. Hyan glanced at it. "Isn't this a picture of spring, Miss?" Qing Mei's eyes widened and she forgot to be shy. "How can you say it out loud?" "Then how can I say it out loud?" Hyan asked her, "Have you seen it? If you haven't, why are you so nervous?" This servant only took a glance. Qing Mei was so anxious that she was about to cry. "No, Miss, this isn't for this servant to see. This is for you." When Qing Mei gave Yin this booklet, she was very conflicted. After all, she was an unmarried girl, and she didn't know how to give Yin something like this. Who knew that Yin would be so magnanimous and casually flip through the booklet? He even commented, "Aunt Lu is too stingy. Isn't this booklet from 3 to 5 years ago? The style is so old-fashioned. Since she wanted to give a wedding gift, why didn't she give something more recent? TSK, it's not as good as the one I used to read." "Miss." Qing Mei looked at her in disbelief. "The one you used to read? Where did you read it? Where did you read it?" Yin remembered that in this servant's heart, she was probably still the same old lady so he said perfunctorily, "I'm just talking nonsense. Forget about it." She turned and left, but Qing Mei followed her like a tail. "Miss, please tell me, clearly. When did you read it?" "I don't remember." After a long time, the sky gradually darkened. Yin finished all the exquisite snacks on the table and heard some noise from outside. She quickly sat up straight and pretended to be dignified and polite. Qing Mei went to open the door. As soon as she opened the door, she saw Lin Shuanghe supporting Xiao Ju as they walked in. Qing Mei was startled. Is young master drunk? Yin heard this and stood up. Lin Shuanghe supported Xiao Ju to the side of the bed and smiled at Yin. "He can mean me. Sister-in-law, Huaijin drank too much today. I helped him back." "Why do you drink so much?" Qing Mei complained. "How can this?" She swallowed the words that were about to come out of her mouth and looked at her young lady with hidden bitterness. After staying with Yin for a long time, she also learned to speak without thinking. Yin turned to look at Xiao Ju. He was supported by Lin Shuanghe to sit on the side of the bed. His head was leaning against the headboard and his eyes were closed. He looked fine and didn't seem to be in pain, but it seemed like he couldn't handle the alcohol. "Xiao Ju can get drunk," she said thoughtfully. "Everyone wants to drink with him. How can he not get drunk?" Lin Shuanghe sighed. "Speaking of which, Huaijin's marriage is a big deal. Those martial artists can all drink. He's still all right. Go outside and look at the hall. He's lying on the floor and vomiting. Especially Yin He. He seemed to be speechless. He kept asking Huaijin to drink with him. Isn't it because he wants to see who can drink more? Why is his desire to win so strong? Yin He won. How can that be?" Lin Shuanghe smiled. He was carried back. Anyway, I've sent him back." Lin Shuanghe waved his fan. "I'll retire after I've succeeded. Mimi, remember to take good care of Huaijin." He smiled. "Good nights are short. Don't waste them." Wait. Before she could finish, Lin Shuanghe had already walked away. "Miss," Qing Mei said softly, "then this servant will also leave." "Why are you leaving?" Yin shouted. "Give me a hand. I'm afraid it's a bit inconvenient." Qing Mei looked as if she was facing a great enemy. She waved her hands. "Besides, this servant isn't very strong. I heard that when Miss was in the Liang Province Guards, you could lift a huge rock by yourself. I think you can take good care of Military Governor Xiao by yourself." She walked towards the door and said, "Then, this servant will also leave." Hey, this servant was sometimes timid, but sometimes she was quite good at arguing. He sighed. This time, only Xiao Ju and her were left in the room. She turned to look at Xiao Ju. When this person was drunk, she was very quiet. She didn't act crazy or speak nonsense. She just leaned against the headboard as if she was taking a nap. Tian walked over and nudged her. Xiao Ju? There was no reaction. She waved her hand in front of Xiao Ju's face. Xiao Ju still had her eyes closed. Tian sighed in relief. She thought that Xiao Ju was indeed drunk. All right, she had gotten drunk in front of Xiao Ju before. Xiao Ju had also gotten drunk in front of her. It was fair to each of them once. Tian sat down beside her and leaned forward to look. When Xiao Ju's eyes were closed, her eyelashes obediently drooped down like the wings of a butterfly. Tian's heart itched, and she couldn't help but reach out to touch her. The young man frowned slightly. She quickly retracted her hand, thinking that Xiao Ju had woken up. After a while, she saw that Xiao Ju didn't respond. She gradually became bolder. Tian had never denied Xiao Ju's beauty. When he was in the Xianchong Hall, he was too lazy to pay attention to anyone. However, he still attracted a lot of attention. Later, when he became the commander of the right military, even though he was rumored to be ruthless, he still didn't drop out of the top 3 of the dream man of Shuojing. It was all because of his face. Tian sat closer and stared at him. TSK, TSK, TSK. She sighed and said, elegant and refined. Just by looking at this person's face, she couldn't tell that he spent every day on the battlefield. How could his face not be haggard at all? His skin was like jade, his facial features were handsome, and his jawline was extremely beautiful. Just looking at him would give birth to evil thoughts. Tian sighed. When the heavens created Xiao Ju, they must have put a lot of thought into it. Perhaps this was the life that others envied, but couldn't get. Tian looked at the man leaning against the wall, and her guts grew. She shouted, such a beautiful person, and now she's in my hands. This is a rare opportunity in 100 years. If I don't do whatever I want, I'll be sorry for myself. As she spoke, she undid Xiao Ju's buttons. There were many layers of wedding clothes, and the room was stuffy. She also saw that Xiao Ju's face was slightly red, and thought that it was because of the heat. Out of kindness, she planned to help take off Xiao Ju's outer clothes and put him on the bed so that they could rest early today. She didn't expect the buttons to be so complicated. She lowered her head and unbuttoned one. Just as she was about to unbutton the second one, her hand was suddenly grabbed. Tian looked up in surprise and met a pair of deep black eyes. His voice was faint and seemed to be teasing her. Then, how do you plan to do whatever you want of me? This person's eyes were clear and sober. Tian cried out, you're not drunk? Xiao Ju curled her lips. A little. Like hell I'll believe you. Tian thought in his heart. He was clearly awake from the beginning to the end. Fortunately, he didn't do anything more excessive just now. Tian smiled and said, then it's good that you're awake. Tell me. Tian didn't plan to let Yin off. He was still holding onto the hand that was on Xiao Ju's chest. He stared at Yin with a faint smile. How do you want to do whatever you want? Yin tried to break free from his hand, but couldn't. She was inexplicably flustered and stuttered. I saw that you were wearing too much and the room was too hot. So I helped you undo 2 buttons. You're lying. Xiao Ju raised her eyebrows and stared at her. I think you're trying to take advantage of me. Yin was speechless. That can't be. How can unbuttoning be taken advantage of? The hand that was placed on Xiao Ju's chest felt as if it was touching a piece of soldering iron. Xiao Ju was the first to burn. Yin was dizzy and said, no, no, no. How can this be called taking advantage of others? What haven't I seen before? I've even seen the red mole on your waist. As soon as she said this, Xiao Ju's body stiffened. After a while, he said faintly, you're quite magnanimous. Yin regained her senses and scolded herself in her heart. Half of her body was on Xiao Ju's body. Her hand was being held by him, and she was touching his collar. She looked like a female hooligan who wanted to take him by force. However, Xiao Ju didn't let go. She could only remain frozen like this. Xiao Ju, let go of me first. Let's talk things over. She held back for a while and finally managed to say this. Xiao Ju glanced at her and suddenly let go. Yin heaved a huge sigh of relief. She thought to herself, is this heater a sun in the room? Why is it so hot that she's panicking and short of breath? Xiao Ju's gaze fell on a corner of a book that was peeking out from under the blanket. She was startled and reached out to take it. "What's this?" Ian looked up and saw what she was doing. Her expression changed immediately. "Wait!" Her words were useless. Xiao Ju was already in her hands. Ian instinctively pounced on her and tried to snatch it away. That was the booklet that Qing Mei had given to her. Ian didn't have time to keep it properly when Lin Shuang came in. She casually stuffed it under the blanket. She didn't expect that Xiao Ju would see it. Ian still remembered clearly how Xiao Ju's face darkened when he saw her looking at the erotic pictures in Jiang City. It was such a joyous occasion. She didn't want to make this young master angry again. Ian reached out to grab it, but was blocked by Xiao Ju's arm. She reached out again, but her hand was dodged again. Dodging and dodging, one advancing and one retreating. Xiao Ju's hands were long and held the booklet to prevent Ian from touching it. Ian had no choice but to jump up and pounce. She was caught off guard and tripped over the edge of the bed, falling straight down. Seeing this, Xiao Ju pulled her forward and the two fell straight down. The bed made an earth-shattering sound. Ian turned her head to look. Fortunately, it didn't collapse. It was very sturdy. She looked at the booklet that she had grabbed and let out a sigh of relief. The next moment, she heard a commotion outside. It was Chung Li-su's voice. "Wow, what a big commotion. My uncle is really amazing." Then, she heard Chi Wu's voice. "Who let young Master Chung in? Hurry up and take him out." "I don't want to. I want to stay a little longer. Let me go." It seemed that someone had taken Chung Li-su away. Outside the door, silence gradually returned. Ian was stunned for a moment. When she came back to her senses, she was lying on Xiao Ju's body. She was still holding the booklet tightly in her hand. Her head was pressed against Xiao Ju's chest. She could feel his chest vibrating slightly. It seemed like he was laughing. He was laughing? Ian suddenly propped up half of her body and looked at Xiao Ju. He looked up and lazily said, "General, he is amazing." "That's natural." Ian was a little dazed. "I'm no longer the last place in the Xianchang Gymnasium." "Yes." In his deep black eyes, there seemed to be a faint smile. He put his hands behind his head. "General, he is a hero among women. You are invincible. I admit defeat. Your words are not sincere." Ian pretended to be fierce. "Since I won, shouldn't I be rewarded?" Xiao Ju raised her voice slightly. "What reward do you want?" Ian was thinking. Suddenly, she felt the world spin. She and Xiao Ju had switched positions. She was at the bottom, and Xiao Ju was at the top. This person's eyes were like a beautiful dream in the window. The strong scent of wine and the scent of moon qilin mixed together. It was intoxicating. "How about this reward?" Her belt was slowly taken out. Ian's nervous voice trembled. Her fingers touched the trophy that she had just snatched. She asked, "Xiao Ju, do you want to take a look first?" "No need." Someone chuckled. The curtain slid down and covered the beautiful night in the tent. "General, he may not know, but men are self-taught when it comes to these things. The moon is silver, the stars are like rain, the red candle tears end, and the spring wind blows." Chapter 249. The sun shone in through the window. The red candle on the table had burned out, leaving only a little bit of red fire oil, like a blooming flower. A hand reached out from behind the curtain. Ian rubbed his eyes and sat up with his hands on his waist. This was a muddle-headed night, and also a night of fighting for the Red Cliffs. If she wanted to recall, forget it. It was better not to recall. She only thought that the phrase, "do whatever you want," was used on her in the end. Did she get any rewards? No. From the looks of it, the biggest winner was clearly Xiao Ju. Ian turned her head to look at her side, but it was empty. There was no one there. She was stunned for a moment, then looked outside. She was afraid that it was already too late. After bathing last night, she was so tired that she fell asleep immediately. Looking at the sun now, she estimated that it was not early. Just as she was thinking, the door opened and someone walked in. Ian raised his head and saw Xiao Ju walk in. Baigua followed behind with a food basket in her hands. She entered the room and placed the bowls and plates in the basket on the table one by one. "You're awake?" Xiao Ju saw that she had sat up and walked over to ask. Ian coughed and nodded. "After washing up, we can eat." He paused and asked hesitantly, "Are you okay?" He-Yan's face turned red and subconsciously looked at Baigua. Baigua had already put down the food and ran away. She looked at the person in front of her. This person looked like he had taken Ian to nourish Yang. After a night, he looked refreshed and did not have any discomfort. She gritted her teeth and said, "Very good. Military Governor Zhao's martial arts are very good, and there are few opponents. I have learned a lot." Xiao Ju's mouth curved and said slowly, "General, he is not bad. Last night, you said that you will fight 800 rounds in the future. He-Yan? ? What kind of words were these? What did she say that?" He-Yan hurriedly covered his mouth. "Wait. Don't talk nonsense. General, he leaned closer, a smile hidden in his dark eyes. "It's only been one night. Are you going back on your word?" He-Yan lifted the blanket, put on his shoes, and ran away. He mumbled, "I'm going to wash up. Where's Qing Mei?" Qing Mei was called in. After He-Yan rinsed her mouth and washed her face, Qing Mei came to help her comb her hair. As she combed her hair, she said, "Miss, oh, I should call you young madam now. Young madam, young master is really good to you." He-Yan replied absent-mindedly, "Oh, I woke up early this morning," Qing Mei said. "I went to the kitchen and instructed the servants to prepare a meal for you. This servant originally wanted to wake you up, but young master didn't allow it. He said that you should sleep a little longer." He-Yan nodded. When he looked up, he saw that Qing Mei was grinning from ear to ear. Puzzled, he asked, "Why are you so happy?" Second young master is good to young madam. Of course, this servant is happy. Qing Mei looked as if she had picked up money. This servant will tell master and young master later that they can rest assured. He-Yan, after she washed up, she changed into a begonia red dress with narrow sleeves. Qing Mei combed her hair neatly. When she combed her hair into a bun, it didn't make her look old. Instead, it made her look cleaner and fresher. He-Yan tied the snake-patterned black jade pendant that Xiao Ju had given to her around her waist. Then, she walked into the small hall. The table was already filled with the food that Baigua had brought over. When the two of them were eating, they didn't like others to wait on them. Thus, Qing Mei left. He sat at the table and gave Xiao Ju a pair of chopsticks. He sighed and said, "Xiao Ju, your family's breakfast is a little too sumptuous." It was all her favorite food, even though she wasn't a picky eater. Xiao Ju's mouth twitched. "You're bought over with just one meal? Then you don't understand," He-Yan said with conviction. "Us ordinary people don't care about pretentiousness. When you get married, what you wear and what you eat is very important." He laughed. "You're easy to feed." He-Yan grabbed a plum blossom bun and smiled at her as he ate. Suddenly, he thought of something and his expression changed. "Oh no, aren't we supposed to serve tea to eldest brother and sister-in-law this morning?" Originally, it was the bride's turn to serve tea to her parents-in-law. However, Xiao Zhongwu and his wife were no longer alive. Logically, they should serve tea to Xiao Jing and Bai Rongwei. "It's okay. I've already told them that we'll go after eating." He-Yan looked at her. "Isn't this against the rules?" "What rules?" This person said casually. "Xiao family doesn't have any rules. You could do whatever you want." He-Yan was startled. Not to mention when she was in the He family, when she married into the Su family, before she went blind, she had to follow the rules every morning and night. Because she was a woman for a short time and then spent many years in the army, there were many rules that she wasn't clear about. She often made a fool of herself. At that time, whenever she thought of the word rules, she would have a headache. Now, someone was telling her to do whatever she wanted. She sneaked a glance at the person opposite her. Xiao Ju noticed her gaze and asked, "What's wrong?" "Xiao Ju," He-Yan said seriously, "in the Shuo capital, you're the first husband. You're really considerate of everything." Xiao Ju's lips curled up. She said calmly, "Of course. After all, your husband fell in love with you at first sight during the Lantern Festival. The next day, he came to propose marriage. If you didn't agree to marry him, he would jump into the river and kill himself." He-Yan, he continued to say casually, "Our General He's skills in commanding troops have reached perfection. She's also very good at controlling her husband." He-Yan thought that it sounded familiar. Only then did he remember that she had casually spouted nonsense to Ling Xiao and the other girls when they were in Jiang. She didn't expect Xiao Ju to remember it. At that time, she was talking nonsense. She didn't expect that Xiao Ju would really become her husband. But now it sounded a little shameless. Ian picked up the sweet syrup and pretended to take a sip. She changed the topic that Xiao family really doesn't have rules. You can do whatever you want. Xiao Ju glanced at her. You can't cheat. You can't meet a man at night. Ian, she asked fearlessly, then what will happen if I break these two rules? Xiao Ju narrowed her eyes and said calmly, break her legs and lock her up. Ian, after a while, she said, Xiao Ju, you're so fierce. She looked at her with a warning look. That's right. After breakfast, Ian and Xiao Ju went to serve tea. Ian had lived in the Xiao mansion for a while, so he wasn't unfamiliar with Xiao Jing and his wife. After drinking the tea, Bai Rongwei took out a small box and handed it to Ian. She smiled and said, this was prepared by me and his brother before Huaijin got married. Today, we can finally give it away. Ian smiled and thanked her. Bai Rongwei looked at the two of them again. The more she looked at them, the happier she felt. After Xiao Ju was betrothed by Emperor Wenxian, Bai Rongwei heard a lot of people talking behind her back about how the second son of the Xiao family married a vulgar martial artist. Bai Rongwei was unhappy when she heard this. Later, when there were invitations, she would say that she wasn't feeling well and wouldn't go. Now that the two of them were walking together, they looked like a pair of jade. Moreover, who said that women should be gentle and polite? She saw that He Yin was lively, and Xiao Ju's expression had become more lively these days. He Yin talked for a while until Xiao Jing told her that it was time to rest. After Bai Rongwei became pregnant, Xiao Jing didn't dare to be careless. He Yin took the box and Xiao Ju out of the door and walked towards her courtyard. Halfway there, she couldn't help but open the box a little. She looked inside and saw that there were 3 hairbrushes made of white jade. From big to small, they were exquisite. Hairbrushes? She was startled. Xiao Ju looked at her sideways. You don't like them? No. He enclosed the box and hugged it. I like them very much. They were more precious than gold, jade, or precious stones. Because of the wedding, Emperor Wenxian allowed Xiao Ju to stay in the Fu for one more day. She didn't have anything to do today. He Yin and Bai Guo had just walked back to the courtyard when they saw Qing Mei and Bai Guo squatting on the ground. In front of them was a small mountain of congratulatory gifts tied with red silk. Young mistress is here. Bai Guo smiled and stood up. We're taking out the congratulatory gifts we received yesterday. Young mistress, do you want to take a look? He Yin saw that the congratulatory gifts almost filled half of the courtyard. He couldn't help but ask Xiao Ju, didn't they say that you are unapproachable and don't have good relations with people in the capital? How did you get so many congratulatory gifts? How many people came yesterday? Xiao Ju didn't say anything. The corners of her lips curled up slightly. She looked proud. I'll go take a look first to see what good things there are. He Yin said and walked to Qing Mei's side. Originally, when he made He Ru Fei, the emperor gave him a lot of gifts. However, he didn't get to enjoy them before they were carried to the He family storeroom. After that, he made Lady He. His family was poor. He hadn't seen the joy of sitting on a mountain of gold in a long time. Qing Mei was also very excited. It was probably her first time seeing so many good things. She couldn't help but share her discoveries with He Yin. Young mistress, look at this. This flower pot is made of colored glass. This ginseng looks very expensive. And this vase, this is the first time I've seen this kind of vase. Is this precious stone real? The little girl chattered nonstop. He Yin followed her and rummaged a few times. Unexpectedly, she found something sent by an acquaintance. It was a gift from Mu Hongjin and Chui Yuji from Jiang City. It was a whole set of pearls. Jiang was close to the water and was rich in pearls. The pearls were plump and bright. As soon as the box was opened, it almost dazzled people's eyes. Chui Yuji was rich and imposing, and Mu Hongjin was overbearing and generous. It was indeed very fitting for them to send such a valuable gift. However, He Yin felt that she probably wouldn't wear this set of pearls in her lifetime. If she wore it outside, It would be like openly putting banknotes on her head. Wouldn't it attract people to snatch it? It was really eye-catching. She continued rummaging and found a small jar of wine. It was a gift from Jinling City's Hua Yu Xian and Kyle Yin. It was the Bifong wine that they had tasted before. However, this jar of Bifong wine was a vintage wine. It had been stored for 7 years. If it wasn't for Xiao Ju and He Yan's great joy, Hua Yu Xian wouldn't have been willing to take it out. He Yan put this small jar of Bifong wine beside him. He heard Qing Mei say, "Young mistress, look at this." He Yan turned to look and was stunned for a moment. This was an extremely long embroidery. The whole embroidery was about half a person's height. It was embroidered with a pair of lotus flowers on a stalk and a pair of mandarin ducks. The embroidery was particularly uniform, and the color was gorgeous and bright. It was definitely not an easy task to embroider such an embroidery. Even if many embroiderers worked day and night, it would take them more than a month to barely complete it. There was a letter beside the embroidery scroll. He Yan opened the letter. It turned out that this embroidery was sent from the Rundu. The embroiderers who embroidered this pair of mandarin ducks were the women who were captured by He Yan from Li Kuang's subordinates. The Rundu had just fought a war not long ago, and the city was desolate. It was the Rundu's county magistrate, Zhao Shiming, who found silk thread and asked those women to sew this embroidery as a wedding gift for Xiao Ju and He Yan. It seemed that those women were living a good life. He Yan was also happy for them. He kept the letter and asked Qing Mei to move the embroidery she had specially picked into his room. Then he stood up and walked to Xiao Ju's side. Xiao Ju waited for him to come closer and raised her eyebrows slightly. "Are you satisfied?" He Yan shook his head. "What's not satisfied?" "Military Governor Xiao, everyone gives a wedding gift. Why don't you give me one?" He Yan said deliberately. She was just joking, but Xiao Ju said calmly, "How do you know that I don't have a wedding gift?" He Yan was stunned for a moment and asked tentatively, "Don't tell me you really prepared a wedding gift?" Xiao Ju crossed her arms and looked at him. He Yan was stunned. "Didn't you already give me a betrothal gift? You even gave me your family heirloom, black jade. If that's not enough, what else do you want to give me?" Her heart was a little flustered. Could it be that in this lifetime, this title of femme fatale was really going to be worn on her head and couldn't be removed? God, she didn't do anything. Xiao Ju pursed her lips and walked to the other side. He Yan hurriedly followed. "Xiao Ju, what exactly do you want to give me?" As they walked, something suddenly blocked their path. He Yan looked down and saw a yellow dog biting the flower bead on her shoe. Air Mao? He Yan had temporarily entrusted Air Mao, who had escaped, to Xiao Ju after investigating the He residence the night before. He didn't expect that Air Mao, who had only stayed in the Xiao family for a short period of time, had already become rounder. The tuft of hair on its head had been tied into a chirp by someone with a red string, which was particularly festive. It was so different from before that He Yan almost didn't recognize it. Air Mao saw He Yan looking down at him and barked at her excitedly. Unfortunately, there was no sound. He pounced on the courtyard and rolled around, biting his tail as he turned around. He Yan was speechless for a moment. This dog really didn't treat him as an outsider. He had gotten used to it so quickly. However, it was clear that he was very satisfied with his life here. He thought that it wouldn't be long before he could be comparable to the pig named Tang Yuan. "I've found a new house where your father and brother are living." Xiao Ju's voice came from beside him. He Yan turned around. "Didn't Lin Shuang say that it would take a few more days?" "He's very busy. How could he have time to help you?" Xiao Ju said calmly. "I've already asked someone to help move. They should be able to move in 2 days." "Eh, so fast? Where is it?" "It's 1 street away from the Xiao family." He Yan grabbed her sleeve. "Wait, you said 1 street away from the Xiao family?" Xiao Ju looked down at her. "You don't like it?" "It's not that I don't like it. It's just..." He Yan's mind was in a mess. "It's close to the Xiao family. You can go back any time in the future. If Dad and Yinsheng want to visit you, it's also very convenient." Xiao Ju frowned. "You don't seem to be satisfied." He Yan looked at her. I did not say anything. A married girl would be gossiped about if she went back to her mother's house every few days. In her previous life, when she married into the Su family, From the time she was married until she drowned, she had only returned once to visit her parents. However, she didn't have any reason to go back in her previous life. Ian did not expect that Xiao Ju would buy the house directly opposite the Xiao family. If this were to spread, he didn't know what people would say about him. For example, those gossiping idlers might push all the blame onto Hien. The title of a bride who didn't know the rules and betrayed the orthodoxy would most likely fall on her. However, Hien wasn't angry at all. He was even happy. "If you don't like it, I like it very much," she said crisply. "You don't seem to think so." Xiaoju looked at her suspiciously. Hien grabbed his sleeve and held his arm. "Xiaoju, I'm so touched. You've taken care of my father, my brother, and even my dog so well. Could it be that God saw how miserable I was in my previous life and sent you to me in this life?" Xiaoju was speechless for a while. Then, she said, "So taking care of your dog will make you feel touched?" "You can't say that." Hien looked at Air Mao, who was playing in the yard. Her heart was filled with emotions. "But I didn't expect you to be such a nice person." There were many rumors in the world that could not be trusted. The so-called heartless, cruel, and merciless were all false rumors. In her previous life, she was a careful wife. Others told her that she had to be filial to her daughter, virtuous as a wife and a mother. She had to be quiet and chaste. She had to be disciplined. She had to be shameless. She had to be gentle. She had to be tolerant. She had to be respectful. She had to be virtuous. She didn't know who was the first person to put these shackles on a woman, but it seemed that these virtues had been passed down for thousands of years. Everyone took it for granted. Everyone was like this. But Xiao Ju had broken these shackles from the beginning. She didn't know that being a wife could be like this. She was free and carefree. Xiao Ju's posture was tall and straight. Hearing this, his other hand pulled down Hien's hand that was holding his and then covered it with his own palm. The moment their fingers interlocked, it was as if a small snowflake had landed on his heart. It flew past quickly, leaving behind a slight itch. "You don't have to be touched," he said calmly. "After all, when you're unhappy, your husband will use his skills to make you happy. Hien, he can't accept anyone else. He only loves you." Hien, this time, she was sure that Xiao Ju was indeed the number one in the Xianchao mansion. She had only said it once in Jiang. She had forgotten it herself, but Xiao Ju still remembered it word for word. She held Xiao Ju's hand. It was as if she wanted to hold his hand until the end of time. She smiled and replied, "That can't be helped. A strong woman is afraid of a persistent man." Chapter 250. The new year in Shuo capital was a double blessing for the Xiao family, but for some families, it was like adding fuel to the fire. In the crown prince's residence, the Guang, Yin sat in his study, his face full of anxiety. After Su Jingfu fell, although a portion of the Su faction went to Chu Zhao, Emperor Wenxuan's revenge was fierce and had lost many of his men. All these years, he did not have much ability and relied on Empress Zhang's family and Prime Minister Su's connections to stabilize his position as the crown prince. Although it was his own decision to abandon the rook to save the king, after making the decision, the Guang Yin regretted it. In these days, the Guang Yin appeared in front of Emperor Wenxuan very frequently and started to interfere with the matters of the court. Empress Zhang told him not to act rashly at this time. He had been close to Su Jingfu in the past, and Emperor Wenxuan probably did not like him. Before the limelight passed, it was best to stay in the residence and not do anything. The Guangyin agreed, but he was even more anxious inside. If his fourth son took advantage of his absence to say sweet words in front of Emperor Wenxuan, who knew what would happen in the future? Now that Xiao Huaijin's power was growing, how could he fall behind at this time? Just as he was thinking, a servant came in and reported, "Your Highness, someone wants to see you." The Guangyin said, "Come in." The person was wearing servant clothes and did not look very eye-catching, but when he raised his head, one could see that his appearance was slightly different from Wei Ren's. This was a Yudo. "Your Highness, this servant is here on Lord Meningbu's orders to pass a message to your Highness." Meningbu? The Guang Yin narrowed his eyes and asked the others in the hall to leave. Then he looked at this person. "Your envoy is still alive?" After the Heavenly Star platform, Emperor Wenxuan had ordered people to put all the envoys from Yudo under house arrest. Until now, he had not said what to do. The Guangyin had tried to get someone to send a message to Menenbu, but it was too tightly guarded and they never found a chance. He did not expect Menenbu's men to come knocking on his door. As if afraid that the Guangyin would not believe him, the servant stepped forward and showed the Guangyin the seal in his sleeve. "If you want me to save your lord, then go back," the Guangyin said impatiently. "Imperial father is still angry. This consort doesn't want to add fuel to the fire. Your Highness, you haven't been to court recently, so I'm afraid you don't know. The fourth prince has been very favored by His Majesty recently, and the courtiers in the court also want to support him. It would have been better if he hadn't said that." Once he said that, Guangyin's expression turned ugly. He sneered and said, "How could I not know? Concubine Lan attends to him every day," the servant said in a low voice. "Sir Menenbu asked me to ask His Highness if he's just going to sit and wait for death." The crown prince slammed the teacup in front of him against the wall with a bang. "Shut up." He was furious. Emperor Wenxuan favored the concubine Lan more than just a day or two. The Guangyin knew that if he was not the eldest son, if Emperor Wenxuan did not have to worry about public opinion, he would have already made the Guangyin the crown prince. It was all because the Guangyin was concubine Lan's son. That be *tch. Indecisiveness will only lead to trouble, Your Highness. The Guangyin looked at the servant. "What do you mean?" The servant lowered his head humbly. "Sir Menenbu asked me to tell Your Highness that His Majesty is old, and the fourth prince is ready to make a move. If this did not happen, the position of Emperor Dewei would have already been in Your Highness's pocket. Now that Prime Minister Su has fallen, and Xiao Huaijin's wings have grown, if Xiao Huaijin seeks refuge with the fourth prince." The Guangyin's heart skipped a beat. This was what he was most worried about. In the past, Xiao Zhongwu did not like him and often caused trouble for him. Now that Xiao Zhongwu was finally dead, his son appeared. But now, Xiao Huaijin was even more terrifying than Xiao Zhongwu. Su Jingfu had not been able to eliminate Xiao Huaijin, and now he had nurtured such a disaster. "Your Highness, why don't you—" cut the Gordian knot. "Impudent," the Guangyin blurted out. He was both shocked and angry. "You dare to speak nonsense in front of me. Your Highness, please spare my life." The servant bowed. Those who achieve great things do not care about trifles. Being kind to others is being cruel to yourself. Otherwise, with Your Highness' benevolence, I'm afraid the fourth prince will take advantage of this loophole. But now, the servant's voice seemed to be bewitching. "If Your Majesty's imperial carriage arrives, you will be the rightful son of heaven." The rightful son of heaven. The Guangyin, shut up. It was as if a demon's box of bewitchment had been opened. Thoughts that had not been moved before were now uncontrollably floated to the surface of his mind. He understood what Menenbu meant, but although he had secretly fought with the Guangxuo in the past, he had never thought of killing his father. Although Emperor Wenxuan favored the Guangxuo, he treated him well. Although in the previous dynasty, there were many cases of father and son killing each other, but the Guangyin felt that he did not have to go to this extent. Emperor Wenxuan did not have many children, and the Dawei had always valued rules. When the time came, Emperor Wenxuan would naturally pass the throne to him. Empress Zhang and the Guangyin both thought so. But year after year, day after day, this wait seemed to be endless. Emperor Wenxuan seemed to be deliberately avoiding something. After waiting for so long, not only did he not receive the imperial edict, but he also waited for the gradual rise of the Guangxuo. In the past few years, wasn't he secretly communicating with the Yudo because he was becoming less and less confident? If Emperor Wenxuan had done what he was supposed to do, he would not be in this situation. Until now, he had been restricted in many ways. In this battle for the throne, he had unknowingly fallen from being the victor to being at a disadvantage. If he allowed the Guangxuo to continue like this, his heart was fiercely stirred by evil thoughts. He might as well go all the way. The servant kneeling on the ground saw the changes in the crown prince's expression. He kindly advised, "Your Highness, this servant has already conveyed His Excellency's message. Your Highness should consider it carefully. As long as you can sit in that position, everything you do now will be worth it. Since ancient times, which one of those who achieved great things did not shed blood on the road? Your Highness, please reconsider." The Guang Yin was provoked by his words and became impatient. He reprimanded, "All right, this prince knows. Get out." Just like when he came, the servant quietly left. The Guang Yin looked at the broken pieces of the teacup on the ground. A trace of haze gradually crept into his eyes. After a while, he seemed to have been awakened and hurriedly left the hall. After the Guang Yin left, the servants of the crown prince's residence came in to clean up the debris on the ground. A beautiful servant walked out from the back of the hall and smiled gently. "Let me do it, Miss Ing Xiang." The servant did not dare to fight with her. Everyone knew that the most favored servant in the crown prince's residence was this servant called Ing Xiang. The crown prince had once argued with the crown princess because of her. However, Ing Xiang had a gentle personality and never gave the servants any face. She got along well with the other servants. Ing Xiang half knelt and gently picked up the broken pieces on the ground. Her expression was as gentle as ever. Her long eyelashes drooped down to hide the strange emotions in her eyes. Meningbu's people actually instigated the crown prince to kill the emperor? At this juncture, it was not a good time. The Chu residence at night was excessively quiet. Ever since Prime Minister Su fell from power, the three legitimate sons of the Chu family who were originally afraid of Chu Zhao gradually became arrogant. Chu Zhao did not have Su Jingfu support, even though he was still an official in the court. Who knew how long that would last? Perhaps one day Emperor Wen Xian would blame Chu Zhao for his resentment towards Su Jingfu. No one could say for sure. Madame Chu would occasionally mock and ridicule Chu Zhao when she saw him. As for Chu Linfeng, he almost did not see Chu Zhao anymore. He was a completely different person from the warm concern he had for Chu Zhao before the incident. Chu Zhao himself was not affected by these things. He continued to do what he was supposed to do every day. The wound on his chest had not fully healed yet. As he was recuperating in the residence, he rarely saw his colleagues. He very cleverly avoided this critical time. His trusted aide walked in and took out a letter from his pocket. "Fourth young master, there is news from Miss Ing Xiang again." Chu Zhao took the letter and opened it. He was fine at first, but after reading the letter, his expression changed slightly. A moment later, he threw the letter into the burning stove. His fingers lightly pressed against his forehead as if he had a terrible headache. "Fourth young master," his trusted aide asked carefully. Chu Zhao waved his hand and did not say a word. He really did not expect the Guang Yin to be so anxious. He also did not expect Ma Ningbu to not forget to sow discord at this juncture. If the Guang Yin had a bit of intelligence, they would not be led by the nose by Yudo. Unfortunately, in these years, just like how Emperor Wen Xian relied on Su Jingfu, the Guang Yin had long been used to letting Su Jingfu take care of everything. Once Su Jingfu fell, he had no idea what to do. "Fourth young master." The trusted aide looked at his expression and thought for a long time. He finally could not help but say, "Fourth young master is very talented. Now that the prime minister is no longer here, the crown prince is impulsive and reckless. Fourth prince knows how to conceal his strength and bide his time. The situation in the imperial court is different from the past. A fine bird chooses a tree to nest in. The crown prince is incompetent. Why not follow fourth prince?" These words were disgraceful, but Chu Zhao had always treated his subordinates well. Therefore, his subordinates were always more daring than other trusted aides. Hearing this, Chu Zhao released his hand and looked at the oil lamp on the table. The flame in the oil lamp was slightly swayed by the cold wind that came in through the window. He said, "If Xiao Huaijin was not here, of course I could. But now, even if it was for Xiao Huaijin's sake, fourth prince would not use me." Even if the remaining remnants of Su Jingfu went to defect, it did not seem to be as important as Xiao Ju. At this juncture, the Guang Yin needed Xiao Huaijin's strength. Because Xiao Zhongwu and Su Jingfu were mortal enemies, the Guang Yin would not give up on Xiao Huaijin and choose him. But if we continue on this path to the end, it's not that I want to continue on this path to the end, Chu Zhao interrupted him. It's that there has never been a second path for me to take. Perhaps this was destined many years ago, when he first met Su Jingfu and knelt under Su Jingfu's tutelage. Then, fourth young master, what should we do now? I need to go to the Crown Prince's residence. A trace of worry flashed through his brows. Although it seemed that Meninbu's words might have caused the Crown Prince to have other thoughts, his words might not be of any use. But since they were already on the same boat, if something happened to the Crown Prince, he would not be safe either. He could only do his best. In Cunning Palace, Empress Zhang sat quietly on a soft couch, her eyes closed as she listened to the zither player play. The sound of a zither was clear and peaceful, able to soothe the impatience in people's hearts. Ever since Su Jingfu's accident, she often had insomnia at night, and the amount of time she could sleep each day was very little. Once she closed her eyes, her eyelids would often twitch violently, as if indicating that something was about to happen. Emperor Wenxuan's health was getting worse and worse, and he did not attend court every few days. Lin Xingtan had checked on him several times, and only said that he would be fine after taking good care of his body. But in Empress Zhang's heart, she felt that this was not the case. She was also somewhat anxious. Prime Minister Su's fall was something that no one had expected, although everyone knew that there would be a battle between Su Jingfu and Xiao Ju. But no one expected that Xiao Ju would use troops on the border battlefield and use magic in the court. Evidence after evidence nailed the opponent to death on the board. Emperor Zhang was not sure whether Su Jingfu's incident would implicate the Guang Yin. Sometimes, Empress Zhang felt that she could see through her husband, Emperor Wenxuan, but sometimes she felt that she did not know him at all. Back then, Emperor Wenxuan was still the crown prince, but he relied on the fact that he was the legitimate son who crawled out of the late empress's womb to obtain the position of crown prince. As the daughter of the prime minister, Empress Zhang had many fantasies about her husband before she married him. But when she became the crown prince's consort, she realized that her husband was just an ordinary man who was obsessed with poetry and singing every day and indulged in pleasure. He had no ambition, no political talent, and no natural domineering aura of the royal family. If his identity was removed, he would be no different from the ordinary man on the street. Empress Zhang was an ambitious woman, but her ambition had always been satisfied too smoothly. Because her husband, who was the emperor, was too mediocre, she did not even have the interest to be jealous in the imperial harem later on. Just like Emperor Wenxuan's ordinary and stable life, as long as her son, Guang Yin, ascended the throne in the future, she would be the Empress Dowager, falling from one supreme position to another. Empress Zhang had always thought this way, until Concubine Lan appeared. Emperor Wenxuan doted on Concubine Lan very much. Originally, Empress Zhang did not care about the emperor's favor. There were countless new beauties entering the palace every year, so it was not worthwhile for her to fuss over each one. But Emperor Wenxuan's love for Concubine Lan actually contained a bit of sincerity. This was very annoying, especially when Concubine Lan also gave birth to a son. Over the years, Empress Zhang had tried to get rid of Concubine Lan and her son, but this seemingly docile and uncompetitive woman was exceptionally cunning, and she avoided disaster every time. Guang Yin unexpectedly grew to adulthood safely. If it was not for the tactful Guang Yin, who had been avoiding the crown prince, Empress Zhang would not have let it go. As long as the Guang Yin's position was not shaken, it was fine to let the mother and son live a little longer. That was what she thought, but this delicate balance was instantly broken after Su Jingfu's death. Empress Zhang smelled a trace of danger. The sound of a zither suddenly cut through a note, and a palace maid came in to report. Empress, His Highness the Crown Prince is here. Empress Zhang opened her eyes, and Guang Yin walked in from outside. You can all leave. She waved her hand, and the zither player and palace maid retreated. Empress Zhang looked at the approaching Guang Yin and couldn't help but complain. Didn't I tell you not to enter the palace during this time to avoid causing trouble? You're good, as if you're afraid that it's not chaotic enough. Why did you come to this empress's place? Imperial Mother. The Guang Yin looked at her somewhat anxiously. If you don't let this sun enter the palace, how would this sun know that the palace is about to sink into the Guang Yan's world? What nonsense are you talking about? Who told you? Empress Zhang sat up slightly, looking nervous. You don't need to know who told me. The Guang Yin asked. Is Imperial Father's health not good? Imperial Mother. Did Imperial Father not reveal any information about the Crown Prince to you? This son heard that Guang Yin went to Imperial Father's bedside every day to talk to him. Who knows what kind of clever words he uses? He said hatefully, if he coaxes Imperial Father until he's dizzy, then wouldn't my efforts be in vain? Shut up. Empress Zhang shouted harshly. Looking around and seeing that there were no servants around, she let out a sigh of relief and said angrily, it's fine if you don't watch your mouth, but you don't know how many pairs of eyes in the palace are watching. Imperial Mother, the Guang Yin said disappointedly. I think that bitch concubine Lan can't wait to make her move. Why do we still care so much? When the concubine Lan was mentioned, Empress Zhang's expression became ugly. She had been conceited all her life, boasting that no one in the harem was her match. Even if Emperor Wen Xin doted on the concubine Lan, all these years, the concubine Lan still had to behave in front of her with her tail between her legs. But the recent situation had broken her original thinking. That woman wasn't just not fighting, she was scheming for something big. All these years, she had been cautious in front of her. Originally, she was just putting on an act, but when the time came, she showed her true colors. What was laughable was that she had been fooled by her. Seeing the change in Empress Zhang's expression, the Guang Yin licked his lips impatiently and suddenly said, Imperial Mother, I don't want to wait any longer. Empress Zhang came back to her senses, looked at him, and asked, what do you want to do? Now that Su Jingfu is dead, Imperial Father must hate me. Plus that bitch concubine Lan said something in front of Imperial Father. If this continues, Imperial Father will definitely make the Guang Yin the crown prince. I can't let this happen. You want to? As long as Imperial Father is gone now, the Guang Yan's eyes flashed with a trace of madness. The throne should be mine. Empress Zhang subconsciously covered his mouth. Do you know what you were saying? Of course I know. The Guang Yin said in a low voice. Imperial Mother, think about it. If Guang Yin becomes the emperor, what will happen to me? Imperial Mother, what will happen to you? If Imperial Father really cared about me, he would have passed the throne to me long ago. Since he is heartless to me, don't blame me for being heartless. At worst, when I become the emperor in the future, I will burn a few more incense sticks for him every year. Empress Zhang was shocked and angry, but before she could say anything, the Guang Yan's legs went soft, and he knelt in front of her and begged, Imperial Mother, please save this son. Help this son to achieve great things. Her expression was uncertain, and she didn't say anything for a while. After a long time, she sighed and said, let me think about it. But from her eyes, it was obvious that she had compromised. Chapter 251. After the end of the year, although it was the beginning of the new year, the snow did not stop. It snowed for an entire night, and the courtyard was covered in a layer of white frost. When Ian woke up, Xiao Ju was no longer there. Strangely enough, she wasn't originally a lazy person. When she was living in a shared bunk in Liang province, she was the only one who woke up before the sun rose among all the men in the house. Perhaps it was because Xiao Ju's bed was especially soft and warm, but she slept soundly at night and woke up later in the morning. Or perhaps it was because Xiao Ju woke up too early. Anyway, when she woke up, there was no one around her. Ian rubbed his eyes and sat up. He lifted the blanket and got out of bed. After a simple wash, he put on an outer robe and opened the door. As soon as he opened the door, he saw a cold light. Xiao Ju was practicing swordsmanship in the courtyard. This person understood the principle of not practicing for 3 days. Even though he was not in the Liang Province Guards, he did not stop his daily training. Ian leaned against the pillar and looked at him. At the same time, he wanted to see where Xiao Ju's swordsmanship had improved over the years. It was cold in the morning, But Xiao Ju only wore a layer of cream clothing. When he wore dark clothing, he was cold and collected. When he wore light clothing, he was especially bright and elegant. It reminded people of the beautiful youth who was always ranked first in the Xianchangwan. Xiao family's courtyard was very large. Other than the pomegranate tree outside Xiao Ju's study window, there was no other vegetation. The empty ground was very suitable for practicing swordsmanship. With a sweep of the sword, the snow in the courtyard was sent flying by the sword chi. The body of the autumn drinking sword was sparkling and translucent. It made people feel as if they were in a painting. Ian looked, and his own hands began to itch. He walked back into the room and grabbed the green jade hanging on the wall. Ever since she took the green jade from Irufei, she had cleaned it many times, but she had never used it once. There were really no occasions where she could use it. After all, Shuajing was not a battlefield. She could not draw her sword and fight with others at any time. However, today was just the right day. Since Xiao Ju was also practicing the sword, he might as well see if the gap between the first place of the Virtuous Prosperity Hall and the last place of the Virtuous Prosperity Hall was still as insurmountable as before. Ian took off her cloak and took Qing Lang with her. With a chuckle, she walked out of the door. Xiao Ju's back was facing her. She suddenly pulled out her sword and stabbed towards Xiao Ju's back. She called out, "Xiao Ju, let me test your sword." The young man abruptly turned his head, and the autumn wine in his hand met with Qing Lang's, producing a crisp sound. In the next moment, both of them took a few steps back. Xiao Ju looked at her and raised her eyebrows slightly. "A sword duel? You don't dare?" Ian lightly tapped the ground with the tip of his toes, laughing loudly as he charged towards him while brandishing his sword. "I'll keep you company." His voice also carried a layer of warmth, sounding especially pleasant in the snowy morning. Qing Mei was holding a broom. When she came out, she saw the two of them practicing the sword in the courtyard. She was momentarily stunned. Although she knew that He Yin was powerful, she had always heard about it from others. She had never seen it with her own eyes. Now that she saw He Yan's sword moves so smoothly, she was both amazed and nervous. She muttered, "Young master, you have to be merciful. Our young madam's body is delicate and weak." Fei Nu just happened to walk in from outside. Hearing this, she could not help but glance at He Yin. He Yin was tilting his head to avoid Xiao Ju's autumn wine. He kicked a pomegranate tree trunk in the courtyard, borrowing the force to fly back. That kick seemed casual, but the entire tree trunk trembled slightly, causing the snow to rustle and fall to the ground. He withdrew his gaze. He really could not see where the words delicate and weak came from. He then turned his head to look at Xiao Ju. It was a very pleasant thing to compete with Xiao Ju. This person's swordsmanship was already excellent back then. Now, after many years, it became more and more exquisite. It was a little similar to He Yan's own swordsmanship. After all, her swordsmanship was taught by Xiao Ju at the beginning. Until now, there were still some traces of the original swordsmanship. It was just that the idiot who always accidentally got hit on the head by the scabbard in the bamboo forest under the moonlight now had a long sword in her hand. She was extremely agile, like a flying dragon and a flying swallow. It was difficult to determine the winner in a short time. Bodyguard Fei knew. Qing Mei did not understand, so she asked the person beside her, "Is young master going easy on young madam?" "No need." Fei Nu was slightly surprised. Young madam's swordsmanship is very good. He Yan's swordsmanship was exquisite and strange. When Lu Buwang first saw her as a woman, there were many changes in her swordsmanship. She did not stick to the form and was full of changes. With the green sword in her hand, it was like a green cloud, dazzling people. Xiao Ju's swordsmanship was more stable. The sword chi was strong, and the stronger the opponent, the stronger it became. Even when he encircled around her, she could still break his swordsmanship. Drinking autumn was cold, reflecting the snow on the ground like a mirror. After more than 10 swordsmanship, Hien suddenly stepped back, lowered her head, and covered her chest with her hand. Seeing this, Xiao Ju paused, immediately put away her long sword, and stepped forward to support her. "What's wrong?" Yin was half hugged by him. Suddenly, she raised her head and smiled slyly. Xiao Ju was stunned. The next moment, she slapped her palm. Xiao Ju reached out to block it, but she was still pushed back a few steps. A wise man should be cut down by his emotions. Using a beauty as the basis for a matter, losing one's will and weakening one's body can turn defeat into victory. The girl held a long sword and said proudly, "Military Governor Xiao is not good enough. You can't even see through the beauty trap." "Beauty trap?" he asked slowly. After a moment, he chuckled and counterattacked with his sword. Yin raised her sword to block it. The two of them fought for dozens of swordsmanship. Xiao Ju restrained He Yan's arm with one hand, and He Yan's hand was restrained from behind. This person even had time to tease her in her ear. "You call yourself a beauty? You are so confident." A warrior can be killed, but not humiliated. He Yan suddenly turned around, pulled out her hand, pressed her sword forward, and then turned around to stab with her sword. The young man's eyes moved slightly. He suddenly put his sword behind his back and stood facing the tip of her sword. He Yan was caught off guard. The sword in He Yan's hand was coming at him fiercely. Seeing that the tip of the sword was about to pierce through his chest, He Yan panicked and forcefully pulled back his sword. However, as the sword moved forward, she was also pulled forward by the sword. There was no way to avoid it, and she fell into Xiao Ju's arms. Xiao Ju was forced to hug her tightly. "What are you doing?" He Yan said angrily. Xiao Ju replied calmly, "If one does not harm oneself, the victim will be real." He lowered his head to look at He Yan and smiled. "General, he is not good enough. You can't even see through the beauty trap." "The beauty trap?" He Yan said angrily. "You are the military governor of the right corps. Do you think it is appropriate for you to use the beauty trap?" "All is fair in war," He Yan said calmly. He Yan sighed. "You are too despicable." The man in front of her looked down at her from above. There was a hint of a smile in his dark eyes. He Yan was stunned. When she saw him slowly leaning over, she immediately closed her eyes nervously. In the next moment, she felt a slight vibration from the chest she was hugging. She opened her eyes and saw Xiao Ju staring at her while holding back his laughter. He stopped a centimeter away from her and raised his eyebrows. "Beauty trap?" He suddenly felt ashamed that she was being scolded for being blinded by her beauty. She turned around and walked away without saying a word. However, Xiao Ju pulled her back and gently kissed her forehead. "General, he is amazing. I admit defeat." Qing Mei was speechless. She quickly turned her head and covered her eyes with her hands. She whispered, "Why did he suddenly?" Chi Wu didn't know when he came over and how long he had been watching. He frowned and said, "How was this a sword duel? This is clearly flirting. Young masters, really. How can he treat Yin Xiu like this?" When Qing Mei heard this, she seemed to have just noticed Chi Wu. When she saw Chi Wu, she remembered what He Yan had said to her on New Year's Eve at the He family. She didn't say a word and walked out with her broom. She didn't even look at Chi Wu. Chi Wu was puzzled. He asked Fei Nu, "I didn't provoke her, right? What happened to her?" Fei Nu was speechless. He patted Chi Wu's shoulder, didn't say anything, and left as well. That morning, a guest came to the crown prince's residence. When Chu Zhao was welcomed into the palace, Ying Xiang was kneeling on the floor and pouring tea for the Guangyin. When the Guangyin saw Chu Zhao, he only glanced at him and said, "What are you doing here?" The Guangyin didn't dislike Chu Zhao, but he didn't like him either. When Su Jingfu was still alive, it was fine. After Su Jingfu died, the Guangyin looked at Chu Zhao and all the dislike he had for him came out. However, when it came to what Chu Zhao had done to offend him, it was still fine. After thinking about it, the Guangyin just didn't like his lowly background and overly handsome appearance. "To share your highness' burden." The Guangyin smiled and said, "Share my burden?" He slowly sat up straight and looked at Chu Zhao. "If you go and kill that idiot Guang Shua now, you will share my burden." The Guang Shua had been staying in the palace recently, and the imperial bodyguards never left his side. The Guangyan's words were spoken in anger. "Is your highness anxious?" Chu Zhao didn't get angry and asked gently. "Chu Xilan." The crown prince waved his sleeve impatiently. "Su Jingfu is dead, and now It's his turn to teach me how to do things? Chu Zhao said. This subject only wishes for your highness to be well. Then don't talk nonsense. The crown prince seemed to have expected what he was going to say. He stared at him with a heavy gaze. Don't forget your identity, Chu's Island. If something really happens to me, you won't be able to escape. Don't think about escaping unscathed. What you need to do now is to assist me, not drag me down. As for those preachings, put them all away. Otherwise, what happened to Su Jingfu today will be your tomorrow. Ying Xiang stood quietly at the side with her head lowered meekly. If one looked closely, one could see her slightly pale fingertips. Go back. The Guangyin stood up impatiently. Don't hang around in front of me. It's annoying. After a moment of silence, Chu Zhao's expression didn't change. He stood up with a smile and bowed. Then, this subject will take his leave. Wait. The Guangyin suddenly stopped and looked at Ying Xiang. He said meaningfully, Ying Xiang, send forth young Master Chu off. Ying Xiang's body stiffened, and she replied gently, yes. She walked in front of Chu Zhao and whispered, let's go forth, young master. The two of them walked out of the hall together. Although it was sunny today, it was still very cold. His foot stepped on the ground, leaving a thin footprint. Did Menimbu's men come again these few days? Chu Zhao asked softly. Yes, Ying Xiang replied. Last night, when the crown prince returned from the palace, those people came again. The two of them walked one after the other, just one step away from each other. From the side, it looked like they were maintaining a polite distance and didn't seem to be very familiar with each other. It seems that the crown prince already has an idea. Chu Zhao sighed. Ying Xiang looked ahead. What does fourth young master plan to do? Chu Zhao said, I'll do my best. This servant heard that fourth young master had seen Miss He once at night. Ying Xiang suddenly changed the topic. You should know that Miss He is now military governor Zhao's sweetheart. If fourth young master uses Miss He as bait, you can at least solve the immediate problem and have the capital to make a deal with military governor Zhao. Why should fourth young master give up? There's no need. Ying Xiang stopped in her tracks. Chu Zhao saw her like this and turned back to look at her. Fourth young master once told this servant that Miss He would become military governor Zhao's weakness. The woman in front of him was gorgeous, but her eyes seemed to be filled with ice. She looked fragile and cold. Her voice was still gentle, but the words she said were as sharp as a sword. But now, young master is wrong. She is not military governor Zhao's weakness, but young master's weakness. Chu Zhao looked at her quietly. After a while, he looked forward and said in a gentle voice, Ying Xiang, are you doing well in the crown prince's residence? Ying Xiang was stunned. The coldness that had gathered in her eyes earlier instantly dissipated into smoke. Her expression became somewhat perplexed. After a while, she lowered her head and said, This servant is doing very well. Chu Zhao smiled. If you're doing well, then it's fine. He continued to walk forward. Ying Xiang paused for a moment, then followed him. The carriage stopped in front of the crown prince's residence. Chu Zhao looked back at her. Let's go back. You've been out for too long. I'm afraid His Highness will be dissatisfied. Ying Xiang raised the corners of her mouth and smiled at him, but there was a hint of sadness in her smile. Chu Zhao got up and got into the carriage. The carriage gradually drove away. Ying Xiang didn't go back immediately. She just stood at the door and looked in the direction the carriage gradually disappeared. Only when she couldn't see anything did she slowly turn around and walk inside. There was no one in the hall. The servant who was waiting on her said, Miss Ying Xiang, His Highness wants you to go to the bedchamber. Her body trembled slightly, and her lips turned pale. She paused for a moment, then lifted her skirt and walked towards the bedchamber. As soon as she arrived at the bedchamber, she saw the crown prince leaning against the soft couch. When he saw Ying Xiang come in, the Guangyin asked playfully, Why were you gone for so long? Ying Xiang calmly walked over and smiled. Was it long? It was only half a stick of incense. His Highness shouldn't pick on this servant's faults. She half knelt in front of Guangyin and leaned against his knee. The Guangyin used to love her pitiful and cute appearance when she leaned against his knee. But today his hand stroked Ying Xiang's hair. His voice was so gentle that it made one's heart palpitate. It was like the calm before the storm. Half a stick of incense's time is enough to do some things. For example, report all the big and small matters in the Crown Prince's residence to Chu Xylan. His Highness? Ying Xiang was stunned. Her eyes widened. What do you mean? The hand that was gently stroking her hair tightened and strangled her throat. Ying Xiang's neck was slender and white. Just looking at it would make people feel tender affection. But now, in this hand, it seemed like it would break in the next moment. It was powerless and sad. Why did Chu Xylan come today? He's not a roundworm in this prince's stomach. How can he know what this prince is thinking? This prince entered the palace yesterday, and today he came in a hurry. Ying Xiang, oh Ying Xiang. The Guangyin stared at her and said fiercely, this prince underestimated you. Chu Zhao came at such a coincidence. Of course, perhaps because he was too anxious to stop him, he exposed himself. The Guangyin was a suspicious person in the past. The reason why he didn't suspect Ying Xiang before was because this woman's appearance was very deceptive. She looked no different from any other woman in this residence who desperately tried to win his favor. And because she was sent by Chu Zhao, she had no one to rely on. Therefore, she served him with all her heart. In all fairness, it wasn't without reason that the Guangyin doted on Ying Xiang. With Ying Xiang's appearance, even if she was sent to the palace, there weren't many people who could compare to her. But now that he found out that she was in the Crown Prince's residence and was secretly passing information to Chu Xylan, this little bit of doting turned into anger and humiliation for being betrayed. Slut! He suddenly let go of his hand and slapped her. The woman in front of him fell to the ground and didn't get up for a long time. This prince said that you were born so beautiful. If this prince asked for you, he would be willing to give you to me. After all these years, he actually didn't touch you. A vulgar smile appeared on Guangyin's face. This Chu Xylan's ambition is not small. Raising you like this is just raising a tool. When the time comes, she will give you away and sell you as a favor. But Ying Xiang. He slowly squatted down in front of Ying Xiang and pulled on Ying Xiang's hair to force her to look up at him. Did this prince not treat you well? Since you entered this prince's residence, why do you still want to work for him? Did you forget that your current master is this prince, not Chu Xylan? Ying Xiang raised her head to look at him. Her face had a deep red mark from the Guangyin slap. There was a bit of blood at the corner of her mouth and a bruise on her neck. However, there wasn't a trace of anger or fear in her expression. She was still as gentle as usual. She looked at the Guangyin affectionately and said in a low voice, "This servant is one of His Highness' people." It was hard to imagine that such a beautiful and charming woman didn't have the same arrogant, domineering, and willful personality. Instead, she was like a helpless white rabbit, always pitiful and submissive. The Guangyin let go of her hand, and she fell down again. She was kicked in the heart again. Even at this time, you are still pretending in front of this prince. You are loyal and devoted to Chu Xylan and have deep feelings for him. However, it seems that he doesn't treat you as well as you treat him. The Guangyin stood up and said in a sinister voice, "Tell me, if this prince kills you, will he avenge you? This servant is one of His Highness' people. If I die, I will be one of His Highness' ghosts. It has nothing to do with fourth young Master Chu." Ying Xiang replied softly, "Well said." The crown prince clapped his hands in delight. "You have such a glib tongue. You can't blame this prince for spoiling you for so long. However, you slut, you should know." A trace of malice flashed through his eyes. What this prince hates the most in this life is disloyalty. If you want to be an adulterous couple with Chu Xylan, this prince won't stop you. However, you have to pay the price for what you have done. He turned his head to look at Ying Xiang. Ying Xiang raised her head and met his malicious and ruthless gaze. She couldn't help but shiver. "This prince won't kill you, but I won't let you have an easy time either," he said. Chapter 252. After the beginning of spring, it no longer snowed in Shuo capital. Instead, it drizzled endlessly, as if there was no end to it. Within the palace, there was no joy of the new year. Emperor Wen Xuan's illness was becoming more and more serious, and the expressions of the palace servants were gloomy. Even the spring rain was dyed with a layer of gloominess. The door to the bedchamber was opened, and the fourth prince Guang Shuo walked out from within. These days, he had been visiting Emperor Wenshuan very frequently. Emperor Wenshuan had always doted on this son of his, and the palace servants did not find it strange. Although they did not dare to openly discuss it, the palace servants secretly thought to themselves that although the Guang Yin was the crown prince, it was hard to say who would inherit the throne in the future. In the bedchamber, Emperor Wenshuan lay on the bed, staring at the bright yellow curtains on the dragon bed. In the past few days, he had told concubine Lan not to come here every day. It was not for any other reason, but because he was afraid that outsiders would see it and spread rumors. People's hearts were hard to predict. If it was in the past, it would not be a problem. However, now that he could not even attend court, he was afraid that he would not be able to protect concubine Lan and her son as well as before. Thinking about Guang Shuo, Emperor Wenshuan sighed in his heart. Guang Shuo was extremely good. He had both ability and integrity, and was also filial. Putting everything else aside, if he had a bit more decisiveness and coldness, he would be a rare wise emperor in a way. However, it was because of his kindness and soft-heartedness that Emperor Wenshuan treated him differently, because this kind of Guang Shuo was more like his own son. Unfortunately, even so, Emperor Wenshuan was unable to change the crown prince at this time and hand the throne to Guang Sha. Once he did so, the imperial court would definitely be in chaos. Based on the Guang Yan's personality, it was likely that the imperial family's sons would immediately fight each other and blood would be spilled in the main hall. If he was in the prime of his life, he would be able to suppress all of this. However, he was already old. All these years, the courtiers had followed the Guang Sha, followed the Guang Sha, followed the Guang Yin, followed the Guang Yin. Everyone had their own thoughts, and he could no longer control them. But, in the end, there had to be a result. Emperor Wenshuan was startled when he heard a slight noise coming from the door. He thought it was a palace servant. Then, he heard a Guang Yan's voice. "Father, is he asleep?" It was a Guang Yan. He was carrying a redwood basket in his hand. When he saw Emperor Wenshuan, who was lying on the bed, about to get up, he hurriedly went forward and helped Emperor Wenshuan up. He leaned against the headboard and called out, "Father, why are you here?" Emperor Wenshuan asked. As soon as he spoke, he was shocked to find that his voice was unusually hoarse. "I heard that father was sick, and I was terrified." The Guang Yin seemed to be a little nervous. After thinking about it, I decided to come into the imperial palace to see father. "Is father's body healthy?" The Guang Yin had always been domineering and arrogant. This was the first time he had shown such a helpless expression. Emperor Wenshuan looked at him and suddenly sighed. Ever since Su Jingfu's accident, the Guang Yin rarely came to the imperial palace. Of course, Emperor Wenshuan knew that the Guang Yin had been close to Su Jingfu in the past because he was afraid that Su Jingfu would implicate him, so he deliberately avoided the limelight. Emperor Wenshuan was also angry with the Guang Yin. It was also because of his relationship with Su Jingfu that he particularly hated him. However, the Guang Yin was his son, and he did not have many sons. Therefore, this was the reason why the Guang Yin was still safe and sound until now. It was because the Supreme Court had received Emperor Wenshuan's verbal order to bypass the Crown Prince and the Guang Yin in all cases related to Su Jingfu. Seeing that Emperor Wenshuan was staring at him, he did not know what he was thinking. The Guang Yin was a little uneasy. He subconsciously opened a redwood basket and took out a small bowl of soup. "Imperial Father, this is the ginseng soup that I ordered from the imperial kitchen." The Guang Yin said anxiously. "Imperial Father, please drink some." Emperor Wenshuan looked at him. For some reason, he suddenly remembered that when the Guang Yin was young, before the Guang Shui was born, he only had one eldest son, the Guang Yin, and he had sincerely cherished him. At that time, the Guang Yin was only 4 years old. He was not as cruel and ruthless as he was now. He was still a small child. Emperor Zhang gave the Guang Yin a bowl of sweet soup. The Guang Yin could not bear to eat it. He carried the bowl all the way from Cunning Palace to the imperial study. The wet nurse who chased after him knelt down in fear and begged for mercy. Emperor Wenshuan held the Guang Yin on his knees and asked with a smile, "Why did you bring this bowl to me?" "Imperial Father." The child could not speak clearly. He struggled to raise the bowl to his mouth. "This is delicious." "Imperial Father, please drink some." When Emperor Wenxuan heard this, he laughed heartily. "You are so young, but you still think about me. I did not dote on you for nothing." Emperor Wenxuan had already forgotten the taste of that bowl of sweet soup. The laughter seemed to have come from yesterday, but in the blink of an eye, the Guang Yin had already grown up. He was no longer the child who would hold a bowl to his knees and act coquettishly. He was also at a loss. After so many years, what exactly did he do wrong to cause the situation today? Emperor Wenxuan took a deep breath and asked, "Guang Yin, do you have anything to say about Su Jingfu?" Because of this bowl of ginseng soup, his heart had softened. He still wanted to give the Guang Yin a chance. The Guang Yin's heart skipped a beat. He did not know why Emperor Wenxuan suddenly asked this question. He only said, "I did not expect that as the Prime Minister, Su Jingfu would collude with the enemy and betray the country. After so many years, Imperial Father trusted him very much. He actually had the heart to rebel. This crime should be punished." Emperor Wenxuan saw the evasive look in his eyes and sighed slightly. He shook his head and said, "When I was young, I read that a scholar is in charge of governing an official. Like a hunter controlling an eagle. He takes the eagle to its back and controls it when it is hungry and full. Do not let it be full, and do not let it be hungry. When it is hungry, it does not have enough strength. When it is full, it flies." In the imperial court, old officials like Su Jingfu are like an eagle with a full belly. They are thick-skinned and shameless. They do not eat without doing anything, and they are content with riches and honor. I do not like them when I reward them, and I do not fear when I punish them. I must not use them for the Dewey. The Guang Yin listened absent-mindedly. His gaze fell on the bowl of ginseng soup. He said, "This son will follow Imperial Father's teachings. That Su Jingfu is really hateful. This son was deceived by him. It is also this son's fault. If I had discovered Su Jingfu's disloyal heart earlier, I would not have let those Yudo succeed." Emperor Wenxuan looked at him deeply. "Guang Yin, it is better to correct yourself than to commit a crime." At this moment, the emperor's eyes, which were originally cloudy, were exceptionally clear. It was as if he could see through people's souls. The Guang Yin suddenly lowered his head. He picked up the bowl of ginseng soup and brought it to Emperor Wenxuan. He smiled and said, "Imperial Father, you must be tired after talking so much. The ginseng soup will turn cold if you don't drink it. Let's finish the soup first." Emperor Wenxuan saw his earnest expression. He was not as frivolous as he used to be. He thought that the incident with Su Jingfu had finally made the Guang Yin improve a little. Emperor Wenxuan nodded. The Guang Yin sat beside Emperor Wenxuan. He picked up the bowl, scooped up some soup with a silver spoon, and brought it to Emperor Wenxuan's mouth. Emperor Wenxuan was stunned. "Aren't you going to test the soup?" "Test the soup?" The Guang Yin looked at him. "Perhaps you haven't served me soup for a long time. You don't even know the rules of testing soup." Although Emperor Wenxuan said this, his tone was still tolerant. "Lao Si comes to deliver soup every day. You have to test it first." The Guang Yin panicked for a moment. It was true that he had not served Emperor Wenxuan for a long time. Therefore, he did not know that Emperor Wenxuan would still remember to test for poison when he was so ill. He also did not expect that even the food delivered by the Guang Yin would not be trusted by Emperor Wenxuan. But this ginseng soup, his fingers trembled slightly. Emperor Wenxuan was only joking. Although there were many rules in the palace, he did not follow every single one of them. He wanted to tell him to forget it, but when he looked up, he saw the Guang Yin's pale face and pale fingers holding the bowl of soup so tightly. At certain times, humans would have intuition. The bowl of ginseng soup was steaming hot. It had been left for a while, so it was just right. A faint aroma could be smelled. However, the person in front of him looked a little too nervous. The emperor's gaze instantly darkened. He slowly opened his mouth, and his tone was unfathomable. "Guang Yin, drink a mouthful first." "Imperial Father, there are no other spoons here. It's fine. I can order someone to get more. Now, taste the soup first." Under such circumstances, the Guang Yin could not avoid it. He could only pick up the soup and use the silver spoon to scoop a spoonful. He slowly brought it to his mouth, but he was reluctant to touch it. Emperor Wenxuan looked at him, and his heart sank. In the past, although he knew that the Guang Yin was tyrannical, they never dared to do anything to him. Moreover, he was his own flesh and blood. He also turned a blind eye to the Guang Yin's conduct outside. This time, even if something happened to Su Jingfu, Emperor Wenxuan still wanted to protect him. Even just now, before he handed the bowl of soup to the Guang Yin, Emperor Wenxuan still wanted to give the Guang Yin a chance. He did not want to mention the matter of changing the crown prince until the very last moment. However, he never expected that the Guang Yin would actually kill his father and the emperor. "Why aren't you drinking?" he said in a low voice as he looked at his son, who was a stranger to him. The Guang Yin gritted his teeth and lowered his head to drink the ginseng soup. However, at the last moment, as if he had touched a soldering iron, he suddenly flung the bowl away and stood up. The bowl of soup fell onto the velvet carpet in front of the couch and splattered all over it. The Guang Yin suddenly came back to his senses and realized how stupid his actions were. He trembled as he looked at his father on the couch. Emperor Wenxuan looked at him with disappointment, pain, and a coldness that had never been seen before. "I didn't know," the emperor said word by word. "Your purpose for coming here today was to take my life." "No, I didn't," the Guang Yin subconsciously denied. "I didn't do that. I only need to find an imperial physician to examine it, and I will know immediately." Emperor Wenxuan's expression was cold. He stood up and was about to get off the couch when he shouted, "Someone, Imperial Father!" The Guang Yin rushed over and covered his mouth. He said anxiously, "I didn't." Emperor Wenxuan's health was not good these days. After being pounced on, he fell directly onto the couch. The Guang Yin took the opportunity to sit on him. He glanced at the cotton pillow on the couch and grabbed it without thinking. He tightly covered Emperor Wenxuan's mouth and nose. There was only one thought in his mind. "I can't let Emperor Wenxuan say anything." The person under him struggled with all his might, but how could an old and sick person compare to a person in the prime of his life? The more he struggled, the more ferocious the Guang Yin's expression became. He almost pressed his entire body weight on Emperor Wenxuan and pressed the cotton pillow as if he was pressing a dying fish. He said in a short voice, "Don't shout. I told you not to shout." The fish that was thrown into the desert from the swamp desperately swayed its body, hoping for a chance to live. Its scales were flung around until the scorching sun dried the fish's eyes. It was completely lifeless. After an unknown amount of time, the struggling under him gradually stopped. The Guang Yin's forehead was covered in sweat. He suddenly released his hand and pulled the cotton pillow away. Emperor Wenxuan was lying on his back. His face was purple and his pupils were dilated. Under the dim light of the bedchamber, he looked like a demon. The Guang Yin was shocked. He fell off the couch and sat on the ground. He could not help but take 2 steps back. After a long time, he came back to his senses and realized that Emperor Wenxuan had really been suffocated to death by him this time. The eunuchs outside had already been sent away by him. Guang Yin had come here today to poison the emperor. However, he did not expect that the bowl of ginseng soup mixed with bo poison would be discovered by Emperor Wenxuan. In the end, he was suffocated to death by him. The bedchamber was empty. The sound of the wind was like the wailing of a demon, causing a chill to run down one's spine. The Guang Yin endured the fear in his heart and stood up. He walked in front of Emperor Wenxuan. He first picked up the bowl of soup on the ground and placed it back into the mahogany basket. Then, he walked in front of Emperor Wenxuan's bed and helped Emperor Wenxuan to lie down on the bed. He smoothed the emperor's eyes and covered him with a blanket. Seeing his father's eyes open, the Guang Yin became bolder. His eyes flashed with a trace of madness. He looked at Emperor Wenxuan's corpse and said in a low voice, "Father, please don't blame me. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for not giving the throne to me. If you didn't force me, I wouldn't have done this. The throne was originally mine. Father, just watch how your son sits on this throne. Just watch." He slowly clenched his fists and suddenly stood up. He took the mahogany basket and turned to leave the bedchamber. It started to rain again in the night. Ian vaguely heard the sound of rain outside in his sleep. After being woken up, he couldn't sleep anymore. He turned over and hugged the person beside him by the waist. It wasn't that he wanted to take advantage of Xiao Ju. It was just that the weather was cold. It was much warmer to hug someone beside him. Xiao Ju slept very quietly. Her sleeping posture was also very good. It was very different from her sprawling posture. Her movements also woke Xiao Ju up. Xiao Ju lowered her head and looked at the person who was hugging her tightly. She asked softly, "Why aren't you sleeping?" "I was woken up," Ian said in a muffled voice. "I can't sleep." This was a little strange. Although many years of military life allowed her to be alert in her sleep, ever since she came to the Xiao family, she still slept very soundly. It was rare for her to have such insomnia. Ian didn't know why, but she felt a little uneasy. It was as if something was going to happen. Xiao Ju noticed her uneasiness. Xiao Ju paused. She rested her chin on her head and asked, "Do you want to sit on the roof?" "Ian," she said, "it's raining outside." "Xiao Ju, it's just a joke." Ian wanted to say something, but stopped. She felt that after Su Jingfu's death, things weren't over yet. The battle between the Guangyin and the fourth prince had just begun. Whether it was Xiao Ju or the Xiao family, they were in a delicate position. She was afraid that it wouldn't be easy to resolve. However, it was a little disappointing to talk about these annoying things in the middle of the night. Ian was thinking about it when there was a knock on the door. Fei Nu's voice sounded from outside. "Young master, I have something to report." She was startled. It was the middle of the night. Why was Fei Nu in such a hurry? What could have happened? This time, she didn't feel sleepy at all. Xiao Ju got up from the bed and lit the oil lamp in the room. Ian also got up from the bed and put on his clothes. When the door was opened, the wind and rain from outside drifted in. The room suddenly became much colder. Fei Nu walked in. His clothes were wet and his expression was serious. Xiao Ju asked him, "What's the matter?" "There's news from the palace. The emperor has passed away." Ian and Xiao Ju were both shocked when they heard this. Xiao Ju frowned. "When?" "The news just came." Fei Nu said, "Young master, do you want to go to the palace?" Xiao Ju thought for a moment and said, "I understand. Go and prepare the carriage. I'll go to the palace immediately." Fei Nu nodded and left. Ian took 2 steps forward with the oil lamp in his hand. He couldn't hide his surprise. The emperor, she didn't expect Emperor Wen Xian to suddenly pass away. Although there were rumors about Emperor Wen Xian's poor health these days, this news was too sudden. She was confused. There were many rumors about Emperor Wen Xian. However, in Ian's opinion, although he wasn't a wise emperor, he was definitely not a fatuous one. Xiao Ju was getting dressed when Ian asked, "Do you want me to go to the palace with you?" Fei Nu's words were simple. No one knew what was going on in the palace. "No need. You stay in a residence." Xiao Ju said, "I'll go to the palace first to see what's going on." Ian nodded. Although he was anxious, he knew that Xiao Ju was right. Her position was not high enough for her to go to the palace in such a situation. As the young mistress of a Xiao family, there was no reason for her to go. But Xiao Ju saw her worried expression and turned around to pat her shoulder. "Don't worry. I'll go back to the residence immediately after I see what's going on." "Xiao Ju, be careful," she reminded her. Xiao Ju got dressed, picked up her sword, and went out. Ian was no longer in the mood to continue sleeping. He walked to the window and opened it. The fine raindrops drifted into the room along with the wind outside. The table was instantly covered with a thin layer of water droplets. The wind blew on Yan's face, causing the hazy sleepiness to disappear. His mind was incomparably clear. Although he shouldn't be thinking about such things at this time, when one thing happened, many things would follow. Before Emperor Wen Xian passed away, he didn't mention the matter of changing the crown prince. Although there was a lot of discussion in the imperial court, if there was no change, the crown prince would inherit the throne. However, everyone knew what kind of person the crown prince of Guangyin was. Although the Guangyin wasn't implicated in the Su Jingfu case, Yin had asked Xiao Ju before. The Supreme Court had received orders from Emperor Wen Xian to protect the crown prince of Guangyin in secret. Emperor Wen Xian didn't have the heart to touch the crown prince because the crown prince was his blood. However, as the future emperor of Dawei, a despicable person who could lead a wolf into the house for the sake of power was not fit to be the emperor. The rain seemed to have no end, and so did the night. Chapter 253. Early the next morning, Xiao Ju did not return. Xiao Jing also entered the palace, while Bai Ronwei and He Yin stayed in the residence. Bai Ronwei was pregnant, so He Yin did not dare to let her worry about him. He did not tell her much about the palace. After the maidservants helped Bai Ronwei into the room to rest, she sat in the courtyard and waited for Xiao Ju to return. When Xiao Ju returned, it was already nighttime. The sky was completely dark, but the courtyard was already lit with lanterns. He Yin was sitting at the table, absent-mindedly reading a book. When he saw Xiao Ju return, he was covered in dew, and his expression was somewhat cold. He hurriedly got up and walked over, asking, "How is it?" Xiao Ju put the wine on the table and took off her outer garment. After a moment of silence, she said, "The national funeral will be held in 3 days." "So soon?" He Yin was surprised. Not only that, before the emperor died, he left behind a posthumous edict. For concubines and 20 palace maids will be buried with him. He Yin blurted out, "Impossible." Regarding the death of the emperor, there were indeed records of women being buried with him. However, this rule had been abolished long before the previous emperor ascended the throne. At that time, Emperor Hezong thought that the burial of women was too cruel, so it was abolished. This was a rule that had been abolished. Moreover, although Emperor Wen Xian did not have much political achievements, he was still considered benevolent and tolerant. He would not have made such a posthumous edict. Among the 4 concubines buried with him, there was concubine Lan. Xiao Ju said coldly. He Yin immediately understood. "You mean this posthumous edict is fake?" Emperor Wen Xian doted on concubine Lan for many years. Now that Emperor Wen Xian had died, no one could protect concubine Lan. He could use a fake posthumous edict to get rid of this thorn in his side. If the posthumous edict is fake. He Yin raised his head and looked at Xiao Ju. His eyes moved slightly. "Have you seen His Majesty?" Xiao Ju looked at him. No. He Yin felt his heart skip a beat. If he hadn't seen Emperor Wen Xuan with his own eyes, he wouldn't know if Emperor Wen Xuan had really died of illness. If it had been something else, I asked the eunuchs in the bedchamber at that time. Before the emperor went to bed, he had seen the 4th prince. Such a coincidence? He Yin frowned slightly. But if it was the 4th prince who attacked the emperor, there was no reason at all. After the national funeral, it will be the coronation ceremony. Xiao Ju sat down on a chair. The crown prince will be enthroned. He Yin's voice sank. This is not a good thing. Before the imperial edict to change the crown prince appeared, Emperor Wen Xian's imperial carriage would arrive, and the crown prince would ascend the throne. Not to mention whether or not the crown prince could sit on the throne. Once the crown prince ascended the throne, the Xiao family situation would not be optimistic. Seeing He Yan's frown, Xiao Ju smiled and comforted her. "Don't worry, I will go to the 4th prince's residence tomorrow." "You." He did not say anything and only looked at He Yin calmly. In an instant, He Yin understood. She lowered her head and did not say anything. After a while, she raised her head again and put her hand on the back of Xiao Ju's hand. Her voice was firm. "Go." Emperor Wen Xian had passed away, and the national funeral was 27 days old. During the national funeral, the court officials were forbidden to eat, drink, and have fun. The date was set, and they would enter the imperial mausoleum 3 days later. Because of Emperor Wen Xian's posthumous edict to be buried with the emperor, the ones who objected the most were naturally the 4th prince, Guang Shui, and the 5th prince, Guang Ji. This was because concubine Lan and noble lady Yanai were buried with the emperor. Guang Ji was still young and only knew how to cry and make a fuss. Guang Shui and the imperial censor objected, but they were rejected by the Guang Yan with the excuse of obeying the posthumous edict. From the looks of it, it seemed that the Guang Yan had seized the throne. However, it was hard to say for the time being. As long as there was no coronation ceremony, the dust would not settle. Even if he really did ascend the throne and become the emperor, it was not unheard of in history that an emperor was pulled down and replaced. Everyone in the court was in danger and was jittery for a while. After Emperor Wen Xian passed away, the Guangyin, as the crown prince, temporarily took charge of all matters in the court. The first thing he did was to release the Udo envoys who had been placed under house arrest. He also gave the order to allow the Udo to seek peace and intended to allow the Wu Tuo to open a market in Wei. As soon as this order was issued, the entire court was in an uproar. If he had wanted to do this before, although there would have been objections, it would not have been so strong. However, after the incident at the Heavenly Star platform, even though the Guangyin knew that the Udo had wild ambitions, they still insisted on seeking peace. This was truly disappointing. The Imperial Censor's reports flew to the Crown Prince's desk one by one, but they were all thrown into the pile of waste paper. The Guangyin seemed to have made up his mind on this matter and did not care about anyone else. The people of Shuo capital did not know the pros and cons of this matter, and the civil officials were mostly neutral. Only the military officials were indignant, but there was nothing they could do. Many years ago, Su Jingfu had already allowed Emperor Wen Xian to use the civil officials. Now, the position of the military officials was far less important than that of the civil officials. In Count Shi Jin's residence, Chu Zhao looked at the long letter in his hand. After a while, he clutched the letter in his hand. The letter was crumpled into a ball, revealing his complicated and slightly angry feelings. He rarely had such a moment. Seeing this, his trusted aide carefully asked, "Fourth young master." Chu Zhao threw the letter into the brazier and pressed his forehead. Although he knew that the Guangyin were brainless idiots, he did not expect them to be so daring. He had clearly warned the Guangyin that killing the emperor was not desirable, but the Guangyin still did it. He was afraid that Empress Zhang and her family had also helped in the background. Otherwise, everything would not have gone so smoothly. Fourth young master, in 3 days, the emperor will enter the imperial mausoleum, and the crown prince will ascend to the throne. Isn't this a good thing for fourth young master? After all, Su Jingfu was no longer around, and a portion of Su Jingfu's people were under Chu Zhao's command. In a way, Chu Zhao was also one of the crown prince's people. As long as the crown prince became the emperor, his fourth young master's future would only get better and better. Chu Zhao laughed, but there was no warmth in his eyes. He can't be the emperor. The confidant raised his head and looked at him. He is too impatient. If there was no posthumous edict, perhaps there would be a chance to turn things around. But once the posthumous edict came out, it only hastened his own death. He said these rebellious words, but there was no fear in his eyes. It was as if he was not talking about the imperial family. That posthumous edict must be fake. I just don't know if it was the crown prince or the fourth prince who did it. If it was the crown prince, then he is not only stupid, but also ridiculous. If it was the fourth prince, Chu Zhao smiled, then no matter what, the crown prince will not be his opponent. You mean, before entering the imperial mausoleum, if the concubine Lan wants to be buried with the emperor, the fourth prince will not allow this to happen. Before entering the imperial mausoleum and ascending to the throne, he will not be able to keep his position. Even now, although every word he said was shocking, there wasn't much fluctuation in his expression, as if he had long since expected everything before him. The confidant felt uneasy. Fourth young master, if the crown prince is not worth following, what should we do now? It was too late to follow the fourth prince now. Moreover, they had too little bargaining chips. They did not have the capital to make a deal with the fourth prince. Chu Zhao looked out of the window. It was already spring, but the weather was still unusually cold. He had originally followed Su Jingfu. If it was not for the Xiao Ju, with Su Jingfu watching over the Guangyin, it was not impossible for him to sit on the throne. But without Su Jingfu, no matter how long it took, the Guangyin would not be the Guangyin's opponent. One day of fighting the enemy, one day of suffering. Sometimes, Chu Zhao felt that he should thank the Xiao Ju. It was because of the Xiao Ju that he gained his freedom. But at the same time, he lost everything. Now, that he followed the Guangyin, it was really the same as walking down the dark path. But if he followed the Guangyin now, at most, he could only linger on with his last breath. Everything he had gained because of Su Jingfu would be lost in an instant. Fate was cruel to him because the path opposite the darkness was not the light. Comparing the two, abandoning one path did not mean that he could choose the other. It was just a measure of how much he had lost. He stood up. I'm going to the fourth prince's residence. The night in Jinling was still bustling as usual. Few people came to Yunlu because of the national mourning. The girls had stopped playing the zither early and only sat in the building. Hua Yuxian also changed into plain clothes. Although the national mourning did not force the people to wear plain clothes, at this juncture, it was better not to make any mistakes. The sky was already dark. In the evening, the rain that had stopped started again. Hua Yuxian held the last packet of red bean cakes that she had just bought from Guangfu Zhai and hid under the eaves of a tea house by the Qinhuai River to avoid the rain. Just as she stood still, she caught a glimpse of a familiar figure coming from the corner. Sir Yang. Hua Yuxian could not help but call out. The man turned his head to look. He was wearing a long sandalwood robe and had a scholarly appearance. It was the governor of Jinling, Yang Mingji. Yang Mingji saw Hua Yuxian and was startled. He must have returned from outside and did not bring an umbrella. His clothes were mostly wet. He hesitated for a moment before walking over. He stood beside Hua Yuxian and said, Miss Yuxian. Hua Yuxian smiled and looked outside. The rain will not stop for a while. Why don't we sit here and have a cup of tea? We can leave when the rain stops. Yang Mingji thought for a moment and nodded. During the national mourning period, he was an official and could not drink alcohol. He ordered a pot of tea and a little tea. The tea house was next to the Qinhuai River. When he opened the window, he could see the boats on the Qinhuai River. In the rain, they were like dark stars in the night. It seems that every time I see Sir Yang, you are alone. Hua Yuxian smiled. Although Yang Mingji was the governor of Jinling, he was different from the previous governor. He did not like to show off when he went out. Even though he had been the governor of Jinling for a few years, not everyone in Jinling City knew him. Yang Mingji lowered his head and smiled. He did not say anything. Hua Yuxian was curious. When she saw this group of young people in Yunlu, she had a deep impression of them because they had experienced the world together. Although Yang Ming was not as stunning as Governor Xiao, nor was he as confident as young Master Yin, nor was he as successful as young Master Yang, he was still handsome and outstanding among the group of youths and had quite an uncommon air about him. When they met again, although he was already the governor of Jinling, he was much quieter. He was not as arrogant as before. Sir Yang, do you know that young Master Xiao got married not long ago? Hua Yuxian took a sip of tea. Kyle Yin and I sent people to send congratulatory gifts. Sir Yang, you are busy with work and probably did not have time to visit. Speaking of which, young Master Xiao looks cold and unapproachable, but he treats Miss He very well. Thinking of this, Hua Yuxian felt a little emotional. When she saw that He Yin was a girl, Xiao Ju took good care of He Yin. She did not expect the two of them to get married so quickly. It seemed that fate was a strange thing. If it was the right person, it did not need 8 to 10 years to find out their true feelings. Yang Mingji looked down at the teacup in front of him. He paused, then said, yes. But he was not as calm as he looked. In fact, Xiao Ju did not invite him. Of course, he also did not think that he would receive an invitation from Xiao Ju. As early as many years ago, the brotherhood between him and Xiao Ju had already vanished into thin air. Back then, Yang Mingji turned his head and looked at the river outside the window. The river water was winding and cold. The boats on the water slowly flowed back to many years ago. Many years ago, he was still a student at the Xianchang school. He did not know the dangers of the world, nor did he know the hardships of the world. He had friends that he sincerely admired, like-minded, generous, and righteous. He also thought that the friendship between young people should last forever, until the Xiao family met with an accident. He was anxious and promised to help to go home and find his father. But he did not expect that his father, who always praised Xiao Ju in front of him, would reject his pleas. At that time, Yang Mingji was very confused. He knelt down and begged. It was probably because his attitude was too firm that Sir Yang could not persuade him and finally told him the truth. It was only then that Yang Mingji knew that his father had always been on Su Jingfu's side. The entire Yang family was under the care of Su Jingfu. If you help him, you will be harming the Yang family. His father stood in front of him and shook his head. You choose. The young man fell to the ground, his eyes full of confusion. He did not understand why his father, who always taught his own people to live righteously, would be like this. If the family teachings he had learned since he was young were just words on paper, then what had he been persevering for all these years? No one could answer him. He broke off with Xiao Ju and chose his family. At the same time, he felt that he was no longer qualified to be Xiao Ju's friend. Later, he took the imperial examination and did not stay in Shuajing. He purposely went to Jinling. He could not face the Yang family, and he could not face himself. He could only pretend that he was still the young man who cared about the world and had a clear distinction between good and evil in this place, where he had traveled with his schoolmates in the virtuous prosperity hall. But until he met Xiao Ju and the others again, Yang Mingji suddenly realized that Xiao Ju, Lin Shuanghe, Yin He, and the others had not changed. He was the only one who had changed. They still went to Luoyun restaurant together, drinking and talking, but they were not in the same mood as before. The old days were like a huge mountain slowly rising from the ground. Unknowingly, they were already insurmountable. Hua Yuxian seemed to see the sadness in his eyes. She paused and finally changed the topic. Now that the emperor has passed away, the crown prince allowed Yudo to open a market in Dawei. Jinling is prosperous if the market is to be in Jinling. Yang Mingji came back to his senses and shook his head. The market will not be in Jinling. Sir, I will stop it. Yang Mingji lowered his head and smiled. If I am still the governor of Jinling. In fact, ever since Su Jingfu's accident, the Yang family had sent him a letter. They told Yang Mingji to look for Xiao Ju. On account of his old friendship with Xiao Ju, they begged Xiao Ju to be merciful. Yang Mingji ignored them. Everyone should be responsible for their own choices, just like how he chose his family, and the Yang family chose Su Jingfu. Later on, when he ignored them and Emperor Wenshuan passed away, his family in the capital must have made a new choice in the shortest time possible. But he could not. In these few years, Yang Mingji stayed in Jinling to repay his debt. Now that it had come to this, he did not plan to continue doing things against his conscience. Opening a market would only bring harm to the people of Dawei. Those Yudo had wild ambitions. Once they entered Jinling, who knew what they would do to the people? This was inviting a wolf into the house. The officials in the court were high and mighty. They thought that this fire would not burn them, so they did not do anything. But once the fire was ignited, it did not matter if they were officials or commoners. He was very clear that in the capital, other than a few bold imperial censors, there should not be many civil officials who dared to raise objections at this time. Yang Mingji also knew that when his memorial appeared in front of the Guangyan Palace, his career as the governor of Jinling would come to an end. Perhaps he would lose his life. Perhaps he would implicate his family. But so what? When he was young, he read, "Be honest with your heart, be honest with yourself, be loyal to the ruler, be respectful to the leader, receive things with trust, be lenient with your subordinates, be respectful to the leader, be respectful to the leader, receive things with trust, be lenient with your subordinates, and negotiate with respect." These are the 7 essentials of being an official. At that time, the youths of the Xian Chongguan were eager to try. Everyone thought that they could do it and become a good official. But after so many years, how many of them persisted? The youths had the courage to stubbornly resist all the injustice in the world. They always thought that there would be a way out. But after a long time, they gradually became helpless and went with the flow. Just like himself, young people with lofty ambitions, and no one heard of them for a long time. In the end, they would rot with the grass and trees. "Young master," Hua Yuxian smiled and called him. Yang Mingji raised his head. "If I am the governor of Jinling, then I am official Yang. If I am not the governor of Jinling, then I am little young master Yang." The beauty by the Qinhuai River was as charming as in his memory. She raised the teacup in front of her. In this servant's opinion, no matter what position little young master occupies, you will always be a hero who abhorred evil and stood up for justice in entering Cloud's tower. Jinling will get better and better. So, little young master, you must not belittle yourself. His friend's voice was soft, like the old days. It contained his past struggles and unbearable hardships. It was like the fog covering the sky above the Qinhuai River. After the fog dissipated, there was still a pool of spring water. He lowered his head. After a long time, he suddenly smiled. He raised the teacup in front of him and touched it with the teacup of his old friend. "You are right," he said in a low voice. "Everything will get better and better." Chapter 254. The Guangyin Crown Prince wanted to agree to the Yudo's request for peace, causing waves in the capital. The censor's report did not change the Guangyin's mind. The Yudo envoy, who had been placed under house arrest by Emperor Wenshuan, reappeared near the palace. Although he was smiling and speaking humbly to the officials, his eyes could not hide the smugness. After the court session, the officials all had different thoughts. Everyone hid their thoughts in the depths of their hearts. 2 days had already passed. Tomorrow was the day of entering the imperial mausoleum. Once they entered the imperial mausoleum, the crown prince would ascend to the throne. Just as they left Qingla Palace, they heard the sound of books in front of them. The officials looked over and saw that in the empty space in front of Qingla Palace, there were dozens of green-robed students sitting there. These students were all sitting on the ground. The person at the front had a long beard and white hair. He wore an official's robe and was already old. He had a cold expression. It was the head of the Xianchang dojo, Wei Xianzhong. Wei Xianzhong was actually a person with real talent. However, his personality was too stubborn and he offended many people when he was young. Later on, he was sent to be the head of the Xianchang dojo. This position was very suitable for his preaching personality. Although he did not have any real power, he had enjoyed himself these years. This time, the Guangyin Crown Prince had agreed to the Yudo's request for peace and opening a market in Wei. Wei Xianzhong strongly opposed it. Apart from the censors, he was the one who wrote the most. It was just that his current official position was so low that he did not even have the qualifications for Guangyin to take a second look at him. Those disgusting words from the bottom of his heart were just another piece of paper added to the pile of waste paper. Dojo Wei, an official who knew him, asked, "What are you doing here?" He then leaned closer and whispered, "Sir, quickly go back. His Highness will not change his mind now." This was a former student who was familiar with him. He did not want to see him offend the future emperor, so he kindly reminded him. Wei Xianzhong was unmoved. He only looked in the direction of Qingla Palace and said, "I am risking my life to remonstrate. I ask His Highness to retract his order and not allow the Yudo to open a market in Wei." There was no movement in Qingla Palace. The sun shone quietly on the long ground outside the palace, as if it was sprinkled with a layer of fine gold. The young students were full of vigor, and their eyes were clear and bright. The old officials were like the setting sun that was about to set, with a little bit of brilliance standing in the spring wind. He slowly stood up. His body, which had always been robust, was now showing signs of old age. He was staggering a little. After standing, he suddenly recited, "Qi, Qi, Qi, Qi manifold. Below is he you, above is Re Xin. To others, it is said to be vast and boundless, to fill the song of the underworld." The students next to him paused for a moment, then followed the elderly curator and began to recite the poem. "The yellow road should be cleared of barbarians. Hana spits out the main court. When times are poor, we can see it. One by one, we hang up our painting." Wei Xianzhong recited the song. In Qingla Palace, Crown Prince Guang Yin smashed the cup at his hand to the ground. "What did that old thing say outside? I'm going to chop off his head." His trusted aide hurriedly knelt and pulled at the corner of his robe. "Your Highness, you must not. At least not before the coronation ceremony. Wei Xianzhong has no other crimes. He is also the owner of the Virtuous Prosperity Dojo. If he is punished lightly, I am afraid it will cause the court officials and the people to talk. He is just a little teacher. If I want to kill him, I will kill him. Who dares to talk about it? The Guang Yin was furious. How is he not guilty? He has not put me in his eyes at all. He despises the imperial family. What is the meaning of this outside? Threatening me? What a joke. How can I be threatened by an old thing like him? Do you believe that I will immediately send people to arrest all his students? Let's see who dares to talk about this matter. Yes, yes, yes. The aide wiped his sweat. But even if you want to teach him a lesson, please be patient for a few days. This way, Xianzhong has a strange temperament. When His Majesty was still alive, he would often speak rudely. I'm not as benevolent as Imperial Father. The Guang Yin gritted his teeth. If he thinks I will be as forgiving as Imperial Father, then he is gravely mistaken. Of course, the aide hurriedly said, but for now, it is better for your Highness not to appear. Let him make a ruckus outside. It will not be too late for your Highness to settle the score after the coronation ceremony. The Guang Yin snorted and kicked away the broken teacup lit in front of him. Then let him live for 2 more days. Outside, Wei Xianzhong was still reciting loudly. His old and shriveled body stood straight in the wind. Or for the hat of Liao Dong, pure and fierce ice. Or for the example of the teacher, ghosts and gods weep heroically. Or for the strike of the thief, the reverse vertical head is broken. Is the majesty of the spirit, the biting cold of eternity. The young students behind him followed the old teacher and recited. It was as if they were not in front of Chungla Palace, under the eyes of the court officials, but in the school of the virtuous prosperity dojo, reading and listening in the spring sun. Looking at this, I look up to the white clouds. My heart is sad for a long time, and the heavens are in the extreme. The day of the philosopher is far away, and the typical is in the past. Reading under the wind, eaves, the ancient path illuminates the color. After he finished reciting, there was no reaction at all in Chungla Palace. Wei Xianzhong stopped and looked at the courtiers in front of him. The courtiers either avoided his gaze or were full of pity. Wei Xianzhong took a step forward and walked up the stairs shakily. As he walked, he took off the official hat on his head. His voice was steady and clear like a large bell. He only said, as a general, I am loyal and fierce. I am proficient in the light of day. I strive for the glory of my life. He then put down the wooden tablet in his hand. Civil officials are not like military generals. The saint said that civil officials are moral and knowledgeable. They are precisely in their position. The civil officials are extremely beautiful and cannot be more beautiful. He walked to the last step and slowly knelt down. He put the official hat and wooden tablet aside and looked at the empty hall of Chungla Palace. His voice was bleak but firm. Although this humble subject does not have the courage to fight, nor have I made any great contributions, I only have a loyal and righteous heart and am open and aboveboard. The Virtuous Prosperity Hall teaches students to read all the books of the saints. Now that I see your Highness going astray, it is this humble subject's fault if I do not advise you. Fighting to the death in martial arts, admonishing to the death in literature. Life and death are like floating clouds to me. Today, this humble subject will boldly use this humble subject's life to advise your Highness to rein the horse at the edge of the cliff and not make a huge mistake. This humble subject asks your Highness to retract your order. Do not let Yudo set foot onto Wei's land. Do not let wolves into the house and open the door to thieves. After saying this, he suddenly slammed his head against the vermilion pillar in front of Chungla Palace. Blood splattered all over the ground in a split second. The courtiers standing at the side paused for a moment and then cried out in alarm. The students of the Virtuous Prosperity Hall rushed forward and surrounded Wei Xianzhong in the center. The wooden table and official hat that had been put to the side were trampled into pieces in the chaos. In a split second, the front of the Chungla Palace was in a mess. In Qinglan Palace, concubine Lan sat quietly and read a book. Not far from her, noble lady and I looked at the smoke slowly rising from the copper cauldron with an anxious expression. Tomorrow was the day that Emperor Wenxuan entered the imperial mausoleum, and also the day that they would be buried together with him. If the Guangyin was merciful, they would be able to have a quick death with a pot of poison. If this brat was more deliberate, they would be sealed in the imperial mausoleum and suffocated to death. Sister, you still have the mood to read. Noble lady and I could not help but stand up and walk over to Concubine Lawn and snatch the book away. Tomorrow is the day that you and I die. I don't believe that you'll be so calm about it. No one could disregard life and death. When Noble lady and I competed with Concubine Lawn for favor, she thought that she would be able to replace Concubine Lawn because of her youth and beauty. She did not expect that she would incur the wrath of Emperor Wenxuan. After that, Guangji was handed over to Concubine Lawn to raise. With Guangji in Concubine Land's hands, Noble lady and I restrained herself a lot and did not dare to go overboard. However, she was still unhappy. Now, however, she and Concubine Lawn had suddenly become burial objects together, no different from the vases that were buried with Emperor Wenxuan. Thus, all of their past grievances could be thrown to the back of their minds. At least at this moment, they were on the same side. There were no eternal enemies in the world, and no eternal friends. Noble lady and I was impulsive and arrogant. After entering the palace, she did not have anyone who understood her. Now, there was no one who could give her advice. After thinking about it, the only person she could rely on was this thorn in her side from the past. Concubine Lawn raised her eyes to look at her. Her tone was as gentle as before. Tomorrow is tomorrow. Why are you worried today? Why should I worry? Noble lady and I said, Of course I'm worried. Can't you see that there is something fishy about this posthumous edict? His Majesty is usually very soft-hearted. It's fine if it's someone else, but why would he let the two of us be buried with him? I think that Guangyin bastard is using his position to avenge private wrongs. She looked at Concubine Lawn again and said mockingly, I know that older sister is carefree and doesn't care about life or death, but does older sister not think about the fourth prince? My Guangji is still so young. You and I both know what kind of personality the crown prince has. Right now, he is dealing with you and me. After the crown prince ascends the throne, it will be Guangshuo and Guangji's turn next. Could it be that you want to watch your son die in front of your eyes? Hearing this, Concubine Land's calm expression finally changed slightly. But before she could say anything, a palace servant rushed in from outside and whispered a few words to the servant girl guarding the door. When the servant girl heard this, she revealed a surprised expression and quickly walked over. When she arrived in front of Concubine Lawn, she whispered, Nyang Nyang, something happened in Chungla Palace. Concubine Lawn and Noble Lady Ni both looked at her. It said that Lord Wei of the Virtuous Prosperity Hall risked his life to remonstrate and asked His Majesty the Crown Prince to retract the decree. His Majesty didn't respond. So Lord Wei crashed his head into a pillar of Chungla Palace and died. Many officials saw it. Right now, it's a mess outside. The students of the Virtuous Prosperity Hall are unwilling to leave. Remonstrance to death. Noble Lady and I frowned. It's been many years since I've heard of this in the palace. Emperor Wenxuan was soft-hearted and excessively tolerant. Out of the 3 memorials sent by the imperial censors, he would at least read one. There was no need to use such a drastic method. However, in this way, even if the Guangyin ascended the throne, they would have a bad reputation for forcing an old official to die. Most of the students of the Virtuous Prosperity Hall came from noble families, and the youths were the most hot-blooded. They had personally seen the curator die. If the Guangyin still insisted on reconciling with the Yudo like they did in the beginning, it wouldn't be good if word got out inside and outside the palace. Concubine Lawn held onto the armrest of the chair and didn't say anything. Noble Lady and I said indifferently, We're struggling to survive here, but someone is still rushing to die. However, that Wei Xianzhong is already 70 or 80 years old, so it's not a loss for him to die. I haven't lived a good life for many years, so I'm not willing to die like this. When she thought of the Guangyin, she couldn't help but grit her teeth. Damn it. Concubine Lawn sighed slightly. and the servant girl helped her stand up. She walked to the window. The sun was just right outside. It was spring, and everything was thriving. Look, look, look a few more times. Noble lady and I couldn't help but sneer. After tomorrow, you won't be able to look anymore. Lady and I, concubine Lon, turned around and looked at her. Do you want to live? You know the answer. If you want to live. Concubine Lan's voice was gentle, and in the silence, there seemed to be a deeper meaning. Do as I say. Ian drove to the Wei family as soon as he knew that Wei Xianzhong was going to die. The Wei family was already packed with people inside and outside, and people were still coming in. Over the years, the Virtuous Prosperity Hall had taught batch after batch of students. If Su Jingfu's students were all over the court, Wei Xianzhong was not inferior in nature. However, after the students left the hall, Wei Xianzhong didn't like to interact with them too much. Therefore, just from looking at it, his status was not as respected as Su Jingfu's. However, now that he was using his life to remonstrate, when the former students heard the news, they rushed over from all directions to see him for the last time. Yin squeezed into the crowd with great difficulty and saw He Xining supporting Madame Wei, who was about to faint from crying. When he saw He Xining was also stunned. When the new students came over to take care of her, He Xining walked over and asked, Sister He, why are you here? In fact, in terms of age, the current Yin could not be called He Xining's elder sister. However, He Xining always felt that perhaps his dead elder sister was still alive, which should be He Yan's appearance, so he ignored many rules. He Yin replied, Mr. Wei is Huaijin's division commander. It will take some time for Huaijin to rush over from outside the city, so I came over to take a look first. Is Madame Wei all right? Not very good. He Xining shook her head. Director Wei probably already had the intention to die. After the incident today, Madame found a few letters in the wooden drawer in his study. They were the last words for her family. He Xining was also very sad. Because of her elder sister, she lived in Wei Xuanzhong's residence. Wei Xianzhong spent most of his time at the Xianchang Hall and rarely came back. He Xining spent more time with Madame Wei. Madame Wei was gentle and didn't care about her previous identity. Who knew that such a thing would suddenly happen? I heard that Director Wei wanted His Highness the Crown Prince to withdraw the order to make peace with the Yudo. He Xining asked tentatively. Then now, He Yin smiled bitterly. I'm afraid that won't do. How could the Crown Prince, a Guang Yin, change his mind just because of Wei Xuanzhong's life? Not only would this person not feel ashamed at all, but he would also be angry that Wei Xianzhong did not know how to appreciate favors. Just as he was thinking, a voice came from behind him. Sister He, why are you here? He Yin turned around and saw Lin Shuanghe and Yin coming in from outside. The two of them were also students of the Xianchang Hall in the past. When they found out about this matter, they naturally rushed over without stopping. Didn't Huaijin come with you? Yin looked around. He's on duty today. He's training with the Nan Mansion soldiers outside the city. Yin sighed in his heart. It was really unfortunate. If Xiao Ju happened to be present today, she might have been able to stop Wei Xianzhong. Generals, Yin isn't here today, either. Yin looked at Yin He, and he was furious. If I was here, how could I let such a thing happen? Because Emperor Wenshuan had passed away and the Guang, Yin was acting so recklessly. Yin He was also very dissatisfied. He didn't want to go to court at all and found an excuse to not be here. In any case, the Guang Yin going to court was just a pretense. Now, he was just taking advantage of the opportunity to eliminate dissidents. Who knew that when he wasn't present, something big would happen? I'll go see Master's wife. Lin Shuanghe walked in. Although Wei Xianzhong was old-fashioned and pedantic and was very strict with women, he didn't take in any concubines in his residence. All these years, he had helped Madame Wei through thick and thin. Now that Madame Wei was left alone in this world, one could imagine the blow to Madame Wei. The young students all knelt in front of the old man's couch. On the couch, Wei Xianzhong, whose blood had already been wiped off, was lying quietly. His official robe was crumpled, and the dirt and blood on it were mixed together, but he seemed cleaner than anyone else. Yin looked at him and felt extremely sad. Although this old man used to be old-fashioned and strict in the Xianchang Hall, and the youths always secretly scolded him for being stubborn behind his back, it was also him who bravely stood up when the civil officials were all trying to protect themselves. Just as he had taught back then, read the books of the saints and do loyal and righteous deeds. He finished the last lesson. Lin Shuanghe's voice sank. The corners of his eyes were not as light as before. He only said, "Mr. Wei is righteous. It's useless to be righteous." Yen he sneered. "Look at that person in the palace. Has there been any movement? Believe it or not, in a few days, the limelight will pass, and those Yudo will still appear on the streets of Shuajing." "I really don't understand," Lin Shuanghe murmured. "Why does the crown prince insist on doing this? Even someone like me, who doesn't understand the affairs of the imperial court, can see it. Those who are not of our race must have different intentions. Could it be that he can't see it?" "It's not that he can't see it," He Yin said softly. "It's just that he has a request." Yen He and Lin Shuanghe looked at him at the same time. Lin Shuanghe frowned and asked, "He Mimi, what do you mean by this?" Yen He didn't ask and only looked at her thoughtfully. He Yin thought for a moment and motioned for Yen He to go to the side. Yen He said impatiently, "If you have something to say it quickly. You and I have different identities. What if other people see it and gossip?" He was particularly clean in this aspect. It was probably because the family rules were very strict. If it was in the past, Yen might tease him. But today, she really didn't have the mood to joke with Yen He. She only asked in a low voice, "Generals Yen, have you seen the fourth prince?" Yen He stilled. The gaze he looked at Yen gradually changed. After a while, he said in a low voice, "Why are you asking about this? Tomorrow is the time to enter the imperial mausoleum." Yen looked at him. "According to His Majesty's posthumous edict, Gui Fein Yang Yang will be buried with him. How can the fourth prince stand by and do nothing? Plus, something happened to Mr. Wei today." "Generals Yen," she asked, "you should know." Yen He's expression changed a few times. The arrogant and impatient expression in the past disappeared and gradually became calm and cold. He said, "Marquis Wuan, stop here. There's no need to ask anymore." Chapter 255. Xiao Ju returned to the Shao Manor in the evening. It was almost dark. Yen saw him as soon as he walked to the door of the courtyard. He hurriedly asked, "Xiao Ju, do you know Mr. Wei?" Xiao Ju said, "I just came back from the Wei Manor." With that, he entered the room. He had gone to the South Manor Army to train early in the morning. Later, he learned about Wei Xuanzhang's death remonstrance and hurried back. He hadn't even had time to change his clothes after returning from the Wei Manor. "I'm going out tonight," he said. Yan's heart thumped. She looked at him. "Xiao Ju." He walked to Yan's side and asked, "Do you still have the black jade I gave you before?" Yan paused. She took the jade pendant from her waist and pinched it in her hand. "I will leave some people in the manor. If I don't come back tomorrow morning, take this jade out of the city and find Shan Han of the Liang Province Guards." "Xiao Ju." Yan didn't directly answer his question. Instead, she grabbed his hand, her expression uncertain. "Are you?" She didn't say the rest of her words. There were some things that didn't need to be said to be understood. Xiao Ju looked down at her. He knew that although Yen was bold, she hadn't done anything out of line in these years. But there's not much time left. After a moment, he put his hands on Yan's and said softly. Yen was silent for a long time. She nodded. "I know. Since there were some things that had already been decided, there was no need to be overly cautious. Moreover, from the looks of it now, this was something that would happen sooner or later. She just hadn't expected it to happen so quickly. Don't worry and go." She raised her head to look at Xiao Ju, and her expression became relaxed again. "I will guard the Xiao family for you here. No one will be able to cross my sword. But Xiao Ju, you have to remember that my sister-in-law is pregnant and can't take the shock. So tomorrow morning," she held Xiao Ju's hands tightly, "you have to come back. If you don't come back, I will bring the sword into the palace to look for you." Xiao Ju was stunned and said angrily, "You dare?" Yen was unmoved. "Let's see if I dare." The girl's gaze was firm. She had always been stubborn. Once she had decided on something, There was no room for regret. After a long stalemate, Xiao Zhu finally gave in and said, "I promise you." Yin smiled. "It's a deal." Night enveloped the entire palace. In the throne room, the crown prince of Guang, Yin, was walking slowly. The palace servants were all dismissed, leaving only a few trusted subordinates to guard the door. He slowly walked up the steps until he reached the end of the steps and stopped in front of the dragon throne. The armrest of the bright yellow dragon throne was engraved with a golden true dragon. He reached out and very slowly stroked the dragon's whiskers and scales. It was clearly ice cold, but it made the blood flowing through his body boil and boil. Guang Yin turned around and sat on the dragon throne. He raised his eyes and looked down at the steps. It was as if he could see hundreds of officials bowing and kneeling in front of him. He was the son of heaven. Everyone should submit to him. When he thought of this, Guang Yin felt proud and elated. His chest was extremely carefree. "Father," he muttered softly, "I have finally sat on this throne." The world was finally his. Since he was born, everyone had told him that Emperor Wenxian would eventually hand over the country to him. In the future, he would become the son of heaven of the Dawei. That was why Guang Yin had always thought so. But he didn't know when, but he realized that the situation had changed. There was a Guang Shua who was more suitable than him to be the son of heaven. Emperor Wenxian's favoritism towards concubine Lan and her son made him panic. His delay in drafting the edict made Guang Yin feel a sense of betrayal. An emperor like Emperor Wenxian was indecisive and didn't know how to judge people. He didn't deserve to be an emperor. Guang Yin thought that he didn't intend to kill his father. But this was the only way to restore everything to its original state. He was just taking back what belonged to him. But Guang Yin looked at the empty Great Hall. He didn't feel happy at all. He understood that Su Jingfu was the main reason why he had so many followers in the court. Now that Su Jingfu was no longer around, many of his former followers had changed their minds and joined the Guang Shua. He Rufei was dead, and he was a fake from the start. If Xiao Huaijin joined the Guang Shua, he wouldn't have the troops to contend against the Guang Shua. He could only rely on the Yudo. This was why he insisted on agreeing to make peace with the Yudo and agreed to their ridiculous conditions of opening a market in Dawei. In the past, he was afraid that the Yudo would leak information and make Emperor Wenxian unhappy. But now, because he had reached an agreement with the Yudo had to pay the price of getting rid of the Guang Shua for him, as well as the thorn in his side, Xiao Huaijin. It was very fair. Guang Yin believed that there was nothing more important than gaining control of the world. The Guang Yin couldn't help but laugh out loud when he thought about how everyone in the world would have to worship and respect him when he ascended the throne tomorrow. "Father's remains haven't been buried in the imperial mausoleum, and your highness hasn't ascended the throne. How can you sit on the dragon throne?" A sudden voice interrupted his laughter. "I'm afraid that's a little inappropriate." Guang Yin looked in front of him. At the entrance of the Great Hall, two of his confidants were holding onto the Guang Shua, preventing him from entering. The Guang Shua looked at him calmly. "Let him in." Guang Yin smiled viciously. "My fourth brother." The confidants loosened their grip, and the Guang Shua walked in. The Guang Yin stood up from the dragon throne and looked at him with interest. "Tomorrow is the day of Concubine Lan's burial. Isn't my good fourth brother the most benevolent and filial? Why didn't you seize the last opportunity to talk to Concubine Lan and instead come here?" He said meaningfully, "Could it be that fourth brother also wants to sit on this throne? When father was alive, he never mentioned anything about being buried with Concubine Lan. Your Highness's posthumous edict may not be true." The Guang Shua was unmoved. "How is it not true?" The Guang Yin sneered. "Speaking of which, when father entered the imperial mausoleum, Concubine Lan was buried with Concubine Lan. It was Concubine Lan's good fortune. Father had always doted on Concubine Lan. After he passed away, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to find someone like Concubine Lan, so he took her with him. Fourth brother, why do you sound like you're complaining? With a posthumous edict in hand, how can you prove that it's fake? Whether it's real or fake, your Highness knows." However, that's not important. The Guangxua sighed. That's right. The crown prince clapped his hands. Whether it's real or fake isn't important. Fourth brother, you finally said something useful. That's not all I want to say. The Guangxua looked at the Guang Yin standing on the stairs. His gaze was calm. I also want to say that your highness killed your father, killed the monarch, and attempted to usurp the throne. As soon as these words came out, the entire hall fell silent. The servants guarding the door stared at the Guangxua as if they were facing a great enemy. The Guangxua only stood there quietly. He didn't have any weapons on him, and just from his appearance, he looked like a weak scholar. The Guangyin stared at him closely. What did you say? I said. The Guangxua's eyes met his, not backing down in the slightest. Your Highness, you killed your father, killed the monarch, and attempted to usurp the throne. The Guangyin looked at the person in front of him. In the past, the Guangxua had always been cautious and taciturn in front of him. He never participated in court affairs. Even though he hated the Guangxua, in his heart, he was certain that the Guangxua wouldn't be able to cause any waves. But now, he didn't know when, but this person's gaze was no longer as timid as before. When he looked directly at him, it was as if there was an invisible fire burning in his eyes. He also had the wanton domineering aura unique to the imperial family. What a joke! The Guangyin mocked. I'm the crown prince. The world belongs to me. Why would I kill my father? It's a thankless task. If we're talking about usurping the throne, shouldn't it be you? He said eerily. Fourth brother, didn't you always hope that imperial father would abolish the old and replace the young? Now that your plan has failed, you want to slander me? Your Highness, why would you think that the world belongs to you? The Guangxua suddenly smiled slightly. Your plan has failed? The Guangyan smile froze at the corner of his mouth. He asked, what do you mean by that? The Guangyin smiled but didn't say anything. He suddenly realized something and loudly called out, Men, come here. Indeed, there were people coming, but they weren't his men. Soldiers wearing golden armor rushed in from outside. The person leading them was actually Yan He. Guide Zhonglong General? The Guangyin was stunned. Then he said in exasperation, Are you crazy? Don't you know that this is rebellion? This is collusion to cause trouble. The Guangyin didn't deliberately suppress Yan He. Firstly, the Yin family was a new noble family. They had always been wise to protect themselves in court affairs. They weren't as popular as the Xiao family. Secondly, the Guangyin also heard that Yan He and Xiao Huaijin didn't get along. The enemy of an enemy was a friend. The Guangyin even wanted to recruit Yan He for his own use. However, Yan He wasn't in the capital for many years. Father Yin was also as cunning as a fox. Although Father Yin agreed to it, he never really took advantage of it. But now, he never thought that Yan He would actually rely on the Guangxua. The Guangyin was shocked and angry. How dare you treat me like this? Generals, Yin isn't colluding to cause trouble. The Guangxua said calmly, I'm just following orders to capture traitors. Guangxua, don't slander me. The Guangxua smiled carelessly and said, Whether I'm slandering you or not, your Highness knows best. At this time, someone came in from outside. It was the fifth prince, Guangji, who was being carried by a guard. As soon as Guangji entered the palace, he pointed at the Guangyin and shouted, It was Brother Crown Prince. That day, I was practicing calligraphy in Father Emperor's palace. I saw Brother Crown Prince carrying a basket into Father Emperor's bedroom. After Brother Crown Prince left, Chief Steward he went in and said that Father Emperor had passed away. Without waiting for the Guangyin to speak, the Guangxua said, Imperial physician Lin from the palace found traces of poison in the blanket in Father Emperor's bedroom. That day, only your Highness brought ginseng soup to Father Emperor's bedroom. The Guangyin sneered. Father Emperor wasn't poisoned to death. He knew better than anyone how Emperor when Xian died. If the Guangxua thought that he could use this to convict him, then he was gravely mistaken. Your Highness, it doesn't matter whether it's true or not. The Guangyin was stunned. This was what the Guangxua had said in response to his fake posthumous edict. But now, there was nothing wrong with using it here. At this time, No one cared about what the truth was. In the struggle of the imperial family, there had always been only winners and losers. The winner was the true dragon son of heaven. The loser suffered a crushing defeat. Guangxua, I'm warning you. My people will immediately rush over. Tomorrow is the day to enter the imperial mausoleum. Your Highness may not know. The Guangxua looked at him with seemingly cold pity. General Fingyun's people have already arrived outside Chengla Palace. Your Highness's people, he said word by word, have all abandoned their armor and defected. Impossible. The Guangyan's voice suddenly became sharp. He said, impossible. But in his heart, panic and fear gradually emerged. It was already this time. The palace hall was filled with Yan He's people. His people hadn't come in yet. If it was Xiao Huaijin's people outside, those Yudo, bastard. Those Yudo were useless at this time. Chu Xilan. A name suddenly appeared in the Guangyan's mind. How could his plan be predicted by the other party? Chu Xilan leaked the secret? That bastard. That ungrateful wretch. Guangxua. Don't be complacent. The Guangyan was already an arrow at the end of its flight. Gritting his teeth, he looked at the people in front of him and slowly retreated. Do you think that the world will believe your nonsense? I'm the crown prince, the heir apparent. The coronation ceremony is close at hand. If you harm me at this time, the world will talk about your conspiracy. Even if you ascend to this position, you won't have a proper title for the rest of your life. You can't avoid being pointed at by others. Your Highness worries too much. The Guangxua didn't feel any other emotions because of his words. He looked at the Guangyan as if he was looking at something ridiculous. Before this, Imperial Father had already written an imperial edict to change the heir apparent. You're lying. The Guangyan's eyes were about to split open. How is that possible? The imperial edict is in the hands of Imperial Father's trusted officials. It doesn't mean that you didn't know about it just because you didn't see it. The Guangxua leaned slightly to the side. The people behind him came forward and handed him a bow and arrow. He played with the bow and arrow and slowly said, Does your Highness still think that the world will talk about me and that I won't have a proper title? The Guangyan wanted to vomit blood. At this time, he suddenly understood what the Guangxua said at the beginning. It doesn't matter if it's true or false. To shut the mouths of the world's people, all he needed to do was to take out an imperial edict. Who cared if it was true or false? The world wouldn't judge it one by one. As long as the person who survived today was the Guangxua, then wouldn't the Guangxua have the final say in what others said in the future? He looked at his quiet fourth brother who slowly picked up the bow and arrow and pointed the arrow at him. The Guangyan subconsciously hid behind the dragon throne and said angrily, What are you doing? Guangxua, stop it. He didn't finish his sentence. A sudden gust of wind blew from the throne room, extinguishing all the lights in the room. In the dim room, a cluster of sticky blood slowly flowed down the dragon throne, staining the dragon's head and whiskers on the armrest of the dragon, making them stand out. It was like a silent peep, but also like a sneer. The sound of the wind covered all the murderous intent. It was a cold night. Ian looked at the sky that was gradually brightening outside the window. His expression gradually became serious. She hadn't slept since Xiao Ju left last night. Bai Rongwei was pregnant, so Ian didn't dare to tell her anything else. Although Xiao Jing had some suspicions, she was kept in the dark and didn't know what was going on. Ian stood guard alone, rubbing the black jade in his hand from time to time. He thought about what to do if Xiao Ju didn't return in the morning. He was afraid that going out of the city to find Shenhan might not be completely safe. Just as he was thinking, there was movement outside. Ian suddenly got up and rushed out of the door. He saw Xiao Ju walking in from outside. There were still some dark bloodstains on the armor he was wearing. Ian asked, You're injured? At this time, Qing Mei hadn't woken up yet. Xiao Ju frowned slightly and asked, You didn't sleep last night? I couldn't sleep. Ian stared at his face. He looked a little tired, but he was still okay. Ian asked, This blood, it's not mine. Xiao Ju paused and said, Let's talk inside. The two of them entered the room. Ian closed the door and turned around to ask, Last night, in the palace, the The crown prince is dead. Xiaoju looked at her. This was expected. In fact, he had already had a premonition when he saw Yan He at the Wei residence that day. Yan He didn't directly answer her question, but many times silence was an answer. He helped him hang autumn wine on the wall. Xiaoju took off his armor and sat down at the table. He poured a cup of hot tea and pushed it in front of him. Xiaoju, what happened last night? Xiaoju looked at her. After a while, she knew that if she didn't tell him, she wouldn't be able to leave the room today. She sighed and told him what happened last night. He listened attentively. Xiaoju only knew a little about what happened last night in the throne room. At that time, he led half of the South House soldiers to fight with the Crown Prince's men in front of Qingla Palace. And he led his men inside. When they came out, they only knew that the Guang Yin was killed by the Guang Shua himself. You didn't go to the throne room on purpose? He hesitated before asking. Xiaoju lowered her head and smiled. She said calmly, Xiao family is different from the Yin family. The Yin family is new and still depends on the royal family. I have too much military power. If I saw the fourth prince kill his brother, even if it's fine now, the fourth prince will inevitably feel uncomfortable after a long time. I don't want to leave a thorn in the fourth prince's heart. Heaven's power was unpredictable. Without the Guang Yin, the fourth prince would be the emperor in the future. Even if he didn't feel anything now, once he sat on the throne, he might not be able to control himself, or things might change. It was better to avoid any possible situations from the start. So, letting Yan He go was a good choice. The Yin family's military power is not great, and they are new and have no foundation. The fourth prince has no qualms about using them. He said, I just didn't think that Yan He would follow the fourth prince. The Yin family had been neutral for so many years. They were as cunning as a fox, but at the last moment, they dealt a blow to the Guang Yin. The Guang Yin probably didn't expect it either. Without the skin, what can the hair be attached to? Xiaoju raised her teacup and took a sip. She said, when it's time to make a choice, even if you don't want to, you have to do it. Yin sighed in relief. In short, it's good that you are safe. But she looked at Xiaoju and asked in a low voice, did the emperor really write the edict to change the succession of the crown prince early on? Did the fifth prince really see the crown prince poison him? These things happened one after another, and it was too coincidental. It made the Guang Yan's ascension to the throne a matter without any objections. It's not important whether it's true or not. Xiaoju narrowed her eyes. The crown prince is already dead. Everything was settled. Chapter 256. In one night, the world had changed hands. The Guang Yin had killed his father and tried to usurp the throne. The fourth prince, Guang Shui, brought along Gai Zhonglong to arrest and convict him. Before Emperor Wen Xuan passed away, he had already written an imperial edict to change the crown prince. After entering the imperial mausoleum, the coronation ceremony was held as usual, but the person who ascended the throne was no longer a Guang Yin, but a Guang Shui. No one in the imperial court dared to object. Guang Shui's way of doing things was completely different from his magnanimous appearance. He was decisive and ruthless. When he was capturing the Guang Yin last night, he had already captured all of the Guang Yan's trusted aides. The Guang Yin army was not strong to begin with. If it was because of Su Jingfu, they still had the support of the He family. But after He Rufei's accident, the Fuyue army's military power was taken back and could not be used by the crown prince. Guang Shua's actions were swift and decisive, causing people to feel a chill down their spines. The courtiers discussed fervently. The fourth prince's imperial aura was beginning to show. As for the previous emperor's edict ordering people to be buried with him, it was also found to be fake. Concubine Lan, Enai Guiran, and dozens of other women were able to keep their lives. When the news reached the ears of the commoners, they all said that the fourth prince was benevolent and wise. The commoners never cared who sat on the throne. As long as they had clothes to wear and food to eat, it did not matter who was the emperor. The courtiers also did not object. Currently, in the Dowei imperial family, the fifth prince, Guangji, was still young. The only person who could hold the fort was Guang Shui. Emperor Wen entered the imperial mausoleum. In Qinglan Palace, concubine Lan took off her heavy ceremonial robe. Just as she sat down, someone walked in from outside. It was Enai Guirin. "Congratulations, elder sister, for getting what you wanted." Enai Guirin walked to the small table and sat down. She put on a fake smile and said, "Soon, this concubine will have to call elder sister Empress Dowager." Concubine Lan looked at her, her eyes as gentle and calm as before. "Noble lady and I, aren't you still alive?" Noble lady and I was stunned. That day, Wei Xianzhong had killed himself in front of Chengla Palace, causing the conflict between the crown prince and De Wei to reach its peak. The crown prince was so violent and paranoid, and she was going to follow Emperor Wen Xuan into the Dark Tomb tomorrow. In the end, noble lady Enai cooperated with concubine Lan. Guangji's words were false, so the Edict of Succession might not be true. At the end of the day, all the Guang Shuo wanted was an excuse, a legitimate excuse. In actuality, at that time, noble lady Enai was also determined to fight with her back to the river. She thought that since she was going to die anyway, she might as well give it her all. But deep down, he did not think that Guang Shuo would succeed. However, Guang Shuo succeeded. It was said lightly, but after a short night, noble lady and I finally realized that if it had been a last-minute idea, if Guang Shuo had only fought for his mother, he might not have been able to win over Guide General and General Feng Yun in such a short time. Concubine Lan had probably foreseen what had happened in the throne room last night many years ago. Thinking deeper, perhaps Concubine Lan was not completely unaware that Emperor Wen Xuan had died at the hands of the Guangyin. Guang Shuo's silence and gentleness, his leniency and disregard of court affairs, Concubine Lan's indifference and gentleness, and Emperor Wen Xuan's love and sincerity were all arranged by Concubine Lan a long time ago. From a beginning to the end, it was not Guang Shuo's acting skills that were too good, but Concubine Lan's idea. Even her son did not know about it. Emperor Zhang might have guessed right about one thing. Concubine Lan was not indifferent, but she did not care about ordinary favors. If she wanted to fight, she would fight for the most honorable position in the world for her son. Therefore, the crown prince was destined to lose because he did not have a mother who could endure for so many years without revealing any flaws. Guangji was still young, and from today onwards, no one in the entire De Wei's imperial family would be a match for Guang Shuo. Noble lady and I slowly felt a chill in her heart. The woman in front of her had a gentle appearance. She had never seen her reprimand anyone in all these years, but it turned out that she was the most terrifying one. It's good that this concubine is alive. Noble lady and I lowered her head, and there was a trace of humility and fear in her voice. From now on, this concubine will follow Concubine Lan well. Guangji, I hope Concubine Lan can take good care of him. Concubine Lan did not speak and only looked out of the window. After a long time, she turned her head back, as if she had heard noble lady Ni's words clearly. She nodded slightly, closed her eyes, and said, "Okay." The crown prince's residence was in chaos. The servants wept and were dragged away by the soldiers. The crown princess screamed as she was taken away. Before she left, she scratched the wall with her nails, leaving a long mark. Someone walked slowly all the way to the last room at the back of the courtyard. This was a secret room. The crown prince's Guangyin temperament was fierce and ruthless. If someone offended him, he would kill them directly to vent his anger. If it was worse, he would lock them up in the secret room of the crown prince's residence and torture them. Now that the crown prince's residence was in trouble, the soldiers were busy arresting the family members in the residence, and no one paid attention to this place. The young man walked slowly, his clean boots stepping on the wet ground. The secret room was very dark, and there was only a dim light. Dark traces could be seen, either dried or glowing. It seemed to be human blood. This place was built like a prison. The rooms were separated by iron bars, and there were no guards. Hearing someone move, the people in the room did not react. At most, they raised their heads slightly, and then quickly lowered them. The people here were already dying, and they did not think that anyone would come to save them. Despair filled this place. He walked slowly. Every time he passed by a room, he would stop in front of the door and carefully examine it, as if he was trying to identify the appearance of the person inside. When he found that it was not, he would walk away. They walked through the rooms one by one until they reached the last room. There was a figure curled up on the ground, lying on her side like a child. Her hands were hugging her shoulders, and her head was buried very low in her chest. Her clothes were untidy. Although she did not move, her body began to tremble slightly. Chu Zhao stopped in his tracks. He looked at the figure inside. After a while, he opened the door. The person inside still did not move. She did not even look at him. Chu Zhao walked in front of this person and slowly knelt down. It seemed that he wanted to comfort her, but he did not know where to start. After a while, he said gently, "Ying Xiang." The person in front of him trembled violently. "Ying Xiang," Chu Zhao paused and said, "The crown prince is dead. I'm here to bring you back." He reached out and wanted to help Ying Xiang up, but he was blocked by Ying Xiang. She seemed to have no strength, and this little bit of resistance was useless. Chu Zhao helped her to sit in front of the stone wall and helped her to brush away the messy hair in front of her eyes. Then he was stunned. "Don't look," Ying Xiang said weakly. It turned out that her beautiful and charming face was covered with terrible knife marks. Because she was not properly treated, the knife marks had not scabbed and were dripping with blood. At a glance, she looked like a female ghost who came to take her life. It was shocking and horrifying. Chu Zhao's heart trembled. The night before the Guang Shuo went to Chengla Palace, Chu Zhao went to the fourth prince's residence. He had already seen clearly that the Guang Yin could not win against the Guang Shuo. Empress Zhang was also not a match for the concubine Lan. He really did not have any other choice. Even if he followed the Guang Shuo now, the Guang Shuo would not use him again. But if he followed the Guang Yin, he would just be tied to the Guang Yin and die together. When Su Jingfu was alive, he told him that no matter what, he had to learn to make choices. He chose to do his last business deal with the Guang Shuo. He revealed the crown prince's military arrangements and betrayed the crown prince in exchange for a condition that would allow him and Ying Xiang to live. He no longer hoped to have any achievements in his official career because it was already impossible. Although survival was a bargaining chip, and he did not know if it would succeed in the end, at least he could survive for now. At that time, the Guang Shuo looked at him as if he did not expect Chu Zhao to raise such a condition. He only asked, "Fourth young master Chu, since you value your servant girl so much, why did you take the initiative to send her to the Guang Yan's side? Since you sent her to be your informant, you should not have any other feelings. Now that things have come to this point, other than asking for this woman, you do not have any other desires." Chu Zhao said warmly. This subject does not understand either. To him, there was nothing in the world that he could not use, and there was no person that he could not use. But every time at some point, he would leave behind some weak spots that should not have existed. Ian was like this, and so was Ying Xiang. He looked at Ying Xiang in front of him, and for a moment, he did not know how to react. Ying Xiang only glanced at him, and then quickly lowered her head, as if she was afraid that she would dirty Chu Zhao's sleeves, and did not say anything else. Outside, the sound of soldiers scolding and servants crying could be faintly heard. Ying Xiang listened carefully for a while, and then said, "Is the crown prince dead?" Chu Zhao came back to his senses and said softly, "Yes. You can leave the crown prince's residence." When Ying Xiang heard this, she did not show a happy expression. Instead, she seemed to take a step back and said, "No. Do you not want to go back with me?" Chu Zhao asked, "Fourth young master." Her voice was as soft as the most fragile silk, as if it would shatter with the slightest pull. Ying Xiang said, "This servant cannot leave." Chu Zhao was stunned. Why? As if she had experienced a great struggle, Ying Xiang slowly reached out her hand and pulled up her sleeves. Chu Zhao's eyes suddenly widened. The originally flawless skin on her sleeves was now unrecognizable, as if it had been burned by fire, and also as if it had been smashed and showed signs of ulceration. The crown prince fed this servant a poison with no antidote. Ying Xiang said, "This servant is a person who is waiting for death." The Guang Yin hated her betrayal and disloyalty, and had countless ways to torture disloyal people. Ying Xiang's appearance was extremely beautiful, so he destroyed her appearance. He also made her die in a most heartbreaking and cruel way. Watching the last inch of her perfect skin fester and finally die was disgusting and nauseating. Killing someone's heart, that was all. In an instant, Chu Zhao was extremely confused. He had not felt this way for many years. Chu Zhao was so smart, it was impossible for him not to realize that she loved him. "Young master," she said with difficulty, "can this servant ask you a question?" The man's voice was very soft, and he was as gentle as ever to her. "Ask." Did fourth young master know early on that Miss Su would send this servant to the crown prince's residence? Chu Zhao lowered his head to look at her. Waves of emotions appeared in his light-colored eyes, which were like fluorite. He did not answer, but Ying Xiang instantly understood. "I see." After saying this, she slowly closed her eyes, and her breath gradually weakened until there was no more life. In the dark room, the man dressed in green quietly lowered his head to look at the woman in his arms. What appeared in front of his eyes was the sobbing he heard many years ago when he stood in front of the colorful paradise of the human world. He looked in the direction of the sound and saw a delicate girl looking at him, beautiful and peerless. He had saved her, but he had also harmed her. If he had not intervened at that time, perhaps Ying Xiang would have been happier than she was now. Unlike now, even if it was her last moment in the human world, she still had to die with bitterness. She did not do anything wrong. If she really wanted to say something, it was because she fell in love with a person like him. After an unknown period of time, Chu Zhao bent down and stood up, picked up Ying Xiang's body, and slowly walked out of the dark room, step by step, towards the outside. When he was at the end of his road, he made the last deal with the fourth prince, and all he asked for was a little bit of pity and warmth. But now this warmth was gone. The last person who depended on him for survival was also gone. In this game of chess, he gained nothing. The whole game was lost. Chapter 257. On the third day of the second month, the fourth prince Guang Shuo ascended the throne. The new emperor inherited the throne and used the Hezong's Qingyan era name. After Emperor Zhao Kong ascended the throne, he rejected the Yudo's request for peace and thoroughly investigated the remaining members of Prime Minister Su's faction. He posthumously conferred the title of Wei Xianzhong, the owner of the Xianchang Dojo, with the posthumous title of Wenzhong. The truth of the Mingshui case was revealed to the world. Su Jingfu had controlled the court for so many years and conspired with the crown prince to oppress the common people. Now that Emperor Zhao Kong had ascended the throne, the Su faction that followed the crown prince naturally would not be spared. The only exception was probably Su Jingfu's favorite student, the fourth young master of Shi Jin's household. Not long ago, Emperor Zhao Kong allowed Chu Xilan's request to resign. After Chu Xilan resigned, he left the Chu family and disappeared from Shuo capital. It was said that someone had seen him at a relay station outside the city. He most likely left Shuo capital. As for where he went, no one knew. However, no one had seen the beautiful maid by his side. In the courtyard, Qing Mei was feeding Heir Mao a cooked bone. Ian looked at the harmonious scene between the two of them and was a little stunned. "Don't tell me you also want to eat that bone?" Someone beside him asked with a hint of ridicule. Ian came back to his senses and saw Xiao Ju walk in from outside. He went out early in the morning. The fourth prince should be called Emperor Zhao Kong now. Ever since he ascended the throne, he had frequently summoned him. Ian understood the fourth prince's plan. There were still some remaining members of the crown prince's faction in the court. Xiao Ju and Yin, he were people that Emperor Zhao Kong had decided to put in important positions. This should be a good thing, but Ian felt uneasy. "Something on your mind?" Xiao Ju raised her eyebrows. After the emperor ascended the throne, the matter seemed to have come to an end. Ian looked at the sky. "But those Yudo probably won't let it go. since they had planned for so many years and worked together with the Crown Prince and Su Jingfu. Now that the Crown Prince and Su Jingfu had fallen, how could they be reconciled? You also know that from generation to generation, the time when a new emperor ascends the throne is the most dangerous time. With the change of power, the position was still unstable, especially when the people in the imperial court had different opinions. It was easy for others to take advantage of the loopholes. Ian had also dealt with those Yudo before. No matter how he looked at them, they did not seem like the kind of people who would willingly retreat. "I know," Xiao Ju said calmly. Ian looked at him. How did the emperor deal with the Wutuo envoys?